Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are, of course, your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast. We are here. It is deadline day, and contrary to what you need to hear or need to believe, Spurs have to be, should be in the market. If you're for the very, very first time, you can find us. We're on iTunes, we're on Spotify, we're across all major audio platforms. We're, of course, on X, we're on Facebook, Blue Sky, we're across social media, and we are covering you through every minute, second, and hour of this transfer window. So make sure you're liking, you're subscribing, you're hitting that notification bell as we bring to you every minute you need to know what is happening on all things Spurs. We're going to have some of your favourite contributors that join us throughout this show from now until the very end. Helping me start the show, I've got Frankie Thomas over at Spurs Related, who's going to work alongside with me in these first few hours to understand quite exactly what is happening with all things Spurs. Frank, lovely to have you here, mate. How are you? Welcome for your debut.
Thank you, mate. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited. I'm hoping that there's some good news to sort of dissect and talk about over the next couple of hours. But with Spurs, you never know.
You never quite know. You never quite know. Look, guys, I say thank you so much already for the overwhelming support for the show. It was only right to try and bring to you where we are right now in regards to the window and what you may need to keep an eye on, certainly in these first few hours as Spurs try and make their moves in the market. Now, overnight, we have heard some pretty devastating news in relation to Dominic Solanke. And it appears that his injury that he's picked up, that ankle injury, is now worse than first feared. And that would mean, and I would just say at the moment, despite there being a lot of reports or one person in particular suggesting Tottenham aren't in for incomings, I think we all are acutely aware Tottenham could have ahead of them a 55, 60 game season. And there's no way Tottenham can go into that season with just Richarlison as the only central striking option. When you look at the fact with Richarlison, I think his best goal return in the Premier League is 12, 13 goals. And we know how difficult it has been to keep him fit. So look, that has meant Spurs have been listed with a whole host of strikers over these last 12, 13, 14 hours. I think it's fair to say now, despite contrary to reports, there will be a scramble out there to see if Tottenham can bring in a striker on the final day of this transfer window. Going from one area of the pitch to the other, we're going to go and look at defence for a second. The situation with Tottenham's defence, it's been suggested that Thomas Frank, although he would like a new central defender between now and the deadline, the situation is it's trying to find one of quality who is prepared to play second fiddle to Christian Romero and Mickey van der Ven. And that has not proved to be easy in terms of Spurs in the market, trying to find somebody that is willing to play almost an alternative or a backup role. That is the issue they're going to have if they are going to try and bring in a centre-back on the final day of this transfer window. As many know out there, there's been strong links to Nathan Ake. There's also been strong links to his teammate at Man City, Manuel Akanji. And we've been told in this last 24 hours to keep an eye on Joe Gomez. So those at the moment are the three in the frame that have been linked in terms of central defensive options. When it comes to the forward area, which I stressed to you that I think Tottenham are going to have to look at, despite there being reports suggesting they're not in at the moment for a potential big incoming on this final day. We are seeing a number of names being linked. And I think what could be key to this is the future of Wilson Odobert, who, of course, does operate as a winger for Tottenham. There are suggestions that on this final day, he's been linked away with a move from Tottenham if they are going to try and make some room in that area, where you would argue the likes of Ademola Lookman would be a player that can play across the front three. Obviously, Morgan Rogers being another prominent option, but again, that deal it feels very, very hard to do at this stage. And I think at the moment, we're going to have to keep an eye in terms of that area to see what is going to happen in terms of that forward area. And it has been mooted in this last 24 hours. Tottenham are eyeing up Mateta at Crystal Palace. I will ask Frank about this. I just think at the moment, given Spurs' protracted negotiations with Eberechi Eze and Crystal Palace's Steve Parish, it feels very difficult now how Tottenham go back into negotiations on the final day to take away Palace's, let's be honest about it, leading striker at the football club. We understand the club have also had an approach turned down for Kolo Muani in these last few hours of the transfer window. We're being told by Fabrizio Romano, this is one to watch. And despite that inquiry, Tottenham could still follow up their interest in Mawani. So I would just say keep an eye on that. And obviously we'll update you throughout the day. But let's turn our attention to you, Frank. Like I say, it does feel, despite what's being reported, a crucial last, 15, 16 hours for Tottenham in the window. How do you see what Tottenham need to do? And we'll get you to unmute from your end for us.
Yeah, I mean, it's pivotal they get some bits done now, right? That they're certainly with the Solanke news beforehand. Before that Solanke news, I probably would have said they needed 2 at least. I wanted another winger or an attacking midfielder if the plan was to play Simmons on the left. I imagine he's going to be used through the middle, but one of those 2, right? And then I wanted a left centre half. But now you've lost Dominic Solanke, and given Richarlison's history, he's obviously started the season pretty well. But I think before this season, he played 29% of minutes in the Premier League since joining Spurs, which is unbelievably low, right? That's not someone that you can rely on to play, as you say, at minimum a 48-game season. And so they need really, in an ideal world now, 2 attackers and a centre half still. I mean, I would prioritise at least. I think they have to prioritise an attacker, certainly now. Whereas before, I maybe thought that they could almost get by till January, but now they need another attacker now because, as I say, Richarlison, Thomas Frank said that he wanted to sort of protect him and have him sort of playing here and there and whatever. You're now probably going to run him into the ground, and he'll be, knowing his history, he could easily be cropped in a month's time or whatever, and then you're sort of making do with Mateta or Brennan Johnson in that sort of role, and so you need a recognised number 9, and so yeah, it's a bit of a concern. The market probably is a little bit dry. I'm not sure the sort of abundance of options out there, but listen, these guys are paid to scout players and find players, and so I'm hoping they have a better, wider range of knowledge of strikers out there than I do. So yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a stressful day, but as I say, that Solanke news has only really made things worse and up that pressure.
Totally agree. Look, I mean, from your perspective, Frank, how confident are you we will see some form of an attacking option come in today, given that Dominic Solanke news? I mean, I said it at the start of the show here. There's no way Tottenham can approach a 55, 60-game season potentially and only have Richarlison, with all due respect, as we've already discussed, that has suffered with a number of significant injuries during his time at Spurs and beforehand. Can you see a way in which Tottenham leave this window with just Richarlison being our main central focus in attack?
I mean, given that it's Tottenham, yes. But I'd like to say no. My hunch, and as I say, I don't know anything. My hunch is that they will probably get someone on loan with an option, whether that be a Kolo Muani, whether that be Lookman. But my hunch is that will be something that will go all the way down to the deadline this evening, and it will happen late. So I think they will get something done, but I think it's going to be serious panic stations at Tottenham.
Yep, you'd imagine, like I say, that Dominic Solanke news, for those that have missed it and aren't aware, Dominic Solanke, our understanding is that injury is worse than first feared, that ankle injury, and he could be out for a significant amount of time. What is quite interesting, Frank, is that we know Wissa has already been pushing for a move all window to Newcastle United. He is still available on this final day, as is Kolo Muani. You mentioned it there. The problem is in that striker market now that the options really, I wouldn't say they're diminishing on the final day, but we know they're not what they are obviously at the start of the window. How big a problem is that, do you think, for the recruitment team to make a correct judgment, given the lack of time against them and that pressing need for a centre forward?
It's a big problem. I mean, Thomas Frank has kind of made it very clear throughout that he wants players that, one, buy into what he does, a bit like kind of Ange did as well, that buy into, they've got to be the right person as well as being a good player or whatever, they've got to be the right person. And I'm not saying that any of those guys aren't the right people, but if you leave it this late, the due diligence that you can get done on these guys does diminish. And so then the time you've got to do that. And so that is a bit of a concern, because I say you want, they're building a squad of a lot of good people, which I love. And I think the ideas behind that are fantastic. And so that's important. They obviously need to get the right fit. But I guess the kind of fear is that they just go with a real panic buy now and it ends up not working. I mean, because as much as you want to have bodies, you want to have quality bodies. Whereas last year you could, if you panic bought on the last day of the window and whatever, you could almost get by playing them in the Europa League. And when we saw it in the group stages that Lancashire played games, Mikey Moore played games and whatever, This year, you need probably 18 international level players or whatever to really, really compete. And right now, I really like, Odegaard and these guys, but I'm not sure right now if you can throw them in, in the Champions League games or whatever. And if I'm totally delighted with that, right? And so, and that's no disrespect to them. I think they're going to be good players, but we're kind of at that point where we have a team of players who I think are very good. I think we have a 13 or 14 players who I think are very good. I worry about a few more, and I think we're only probably going to get weaker as the season goes on.
Yeah, listen, you have to agree with that. I totally agree on that. We are getting a little bit of an update in terms of Dominic Solanke's situation. This is from Tom Allnut of the Times. Tom has suggested that Solanke has had an injection in his ankle to settle it down and will be assessed over the international break. But there is confidence he is not expected to be out for a lengthy period. But look, again, we have to say this, that we have seen Tottenham before, have time frames for players, and not necessarily we've seen players within those timeframes come back. I think, is that one of the things, Frank, that would be a concern with Solanke? The fact that it's not the first injury, it's the ankle again, and there feels, I know when the club seem to put out these timescales, maybe very little confidence in the fact that these timescales are stuck to. I mean, I feel like as a fan base, and certainly as the club at the moment, or players, I don't think we can simply rely on just the one striker, even if we've got confidence Solanke isn't out for a long time. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would. I mean, I think back to when we lost Kulusevski a week before the Europa League final last year against Palace, and we were told he'd be all right. And now it's looking like he's not going out to the new year. He's not going back till the new year. And so whatever we kind of get told and fed and whatever, it doesn't always feel like we should fully trust it. And listen, Solanke, even that last season at Bournemouth, I think played like every game of that season. Wasn't injured once, whatever. He's come to Tottenham and he's probably had 5 separate injuries or 5 separate occasions where he's missed games for this or that. And that's a concern. And as we've already said, you can't rely as much on Richarlison, because whether people like him, loathe him, whatever, he's not someone that, in terms of fitness, is reliable enough. I mean, we saw it in January last year when I mean, I think Ange said it, that one of the reasons he kind of did get cropped by the end of January and joined that sort of long list of these guys was largely because he'd been out for so long and then played a ridiculous amount of games in 30 odd days. And Thomas Frank then said this year, obviously, this is what he wants to veer away from. And you can't veer away from that now. You can give Tell a game here as a striker here and there, and Johnson can play that role. But you need a number 9. You need an out-and-out striker. And my fear is that this is going to happen too often, that we're never actually going to have 2 options. That for a lot of the season, Solanke is going to be run into the ground for a month and a half. And then he's going to get injured. And then a half-fit Richarlison's going to come back and do the exact same. And we're just going to slowly get weaker. And that's my fear now with it.
Yeah, and this is, again, a concern. Just so everybody is aware, we are hearing reports at the moment that are just coming into us from Tom Allnut, again, of the Times, that there is no indication right now Spurs have yet revived their negotiations with Paris Saint-Germain for Randall Kolo Muani. So at the moment, no indication Spurs have yet revived their negotiations with Paris Saint-Germain for Kolo Muani. And again, this is now also being reported by Tom. Spurs are still hopeful, contrary to other reports, they're hopeful of bringing in a forward and a central defender on this deadline day. However, club sources say Spurs will only move today if the right players are available. And I think that also is crucial, Frank. Look, whilst me and you are here and we obviously want to see the club bring in a striker, I think given what we've seen so far this window with the likes of Isak and Vissa's behaviour, and don't get me wrong, that we need a forward, how important is it, Frank, that we do bring in the right profile, the right kind of player, and we don't bring somebody in that does disrupt the camp? Because, as we've heard from Thomas Frank, he has this no dickhead policy. How important is it that Spurs stick to bringing in the right kind of profile of players, or will we caught up in the madness here, Frank? What do you think?
It's massively important. I mean, I kind of touched on it earlier on about doing their due diligence on these guys. And I think since maybe the start of Ange, they've done that really well. I mean, we saw it terribly at times with people like Ndombele and these guys, that none of this homework ever felt like it was done. But in the last couple of years, I think the homework they've done on some of these guys has been good. They're bringing in good eggs. They're bringing in obviously talented players and players with high ceilings and all these sort of things that build to, together to make a squad that should be successful. And that's, you don't want someone to come in and disrupt that, because Thomas Frank's obviously trying to sort of add to this culture that maybe Ange built the foundations of. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously, Johan Wissa, as you touched on, that someone that's sort of been a problem this summer for Brentford. I mean,
Are you
maybe
surprised, Frank? Sorry, are you
yeah.
surprised the club have not approached Johan Wissa, a player that's worked with obviously Thomas Frank before, 19 non-penalty goals last season, would have known him very, very well. Do you just get the feeling, Frank, his heart is absolutely set on Newcastle United, and there is no way at this stage of convincing him to come anywhere else, despite that strong relationship with Frank, and despite the amount of goals he scored, and despite Frank's development of the player?
Yeah, I mean, up until this point, probably. But then I do wonder, it wouldn't shock me today if kind of out of nowhere, this was something that started to materialize. Solely because obviously Newcastle, I know they've now sold Isak, but they brought in Voltemade and whatever. Alanga's come in as well. There's Barnes there, Gordon. So maybe Wissa looks at it and goes, that game time isn't as guaranteed as maybe it once was. Whereas I think coming to Tottenham now, you're probably really, if you come to Tottenham now on that left-hand side, competing at the moment with Brennan Johnson. The other two, Untel and Odegaard, are there or thereabouts. They will get minutes, but I think Johnson's probably at the moment that left winger. But it's certainly one that can be upgraded. So I think if you come in and play well, you can be that starting left winger whenever you want for Tottenham. And so I think that will be a selling point to Wissa. Obviously, the Thomas Frank link as well. I obviously he's acted in the way he has this summer, which is not ideal. But I don't think there's, it wouldn't shock me at all if this was something that, as I say, 1 o'clock today materialised and we start getting all these exclusives that Tottenham are going for it as much of a panic as anything, but a deal that, listen, as you say, scored a lot of goals last season. And you know what you're going to get. Maybe the ceiling isn't as high. Maybe that is his peak, but you know what you're going to get, and he's going to come in and do a good job for you.
Yeah, he is indeed. Look, we are going to say, just before we do bring you an update on outgoings, which I know people feel is the most important thing of the day. It is also obviously about incomings. It's understood Spurs are showing a form of interest in Lois Openda. Wouldn't be the first time that player has been linked to Spurs in relation to a window. You give me your thoughts on that, Frank. Lois Openda, I've got business to say to you, I don't have too much knowledge on him personally. But in terms of the forward options that are out there, I think, despite Tottenham maybe going to Palace or attempting to go to Palace for Jean-Philippe Mateta, which, as I think we've discussed already, feels very unlikely they're going to part with him given the protracted negotiations for Eberechi Eze and how that ended up. Obviously, as we spoke about earlier, we understand there is interest in Kolo Muani. Tottenham yet to revive their interest in the forward. Lois Openda, is that someone that you feel would make a difference to the squad? Does he improve us, Frank, as a whole for you?
I think he would have done. I think, sadly, he's gone to Juventus, though, which is
that confirmed?
I think he's gone. I think he's arrived for his medical a little while ago.
Right, okay.
So sadly,
it's
that is
moving.
Probably. Yeah, I mean, sadly, that's probably the most desirable name on the list for me. Actually, that's probably.
So we'll heavily take that one off. That one's off. Tick that one off. Okay. Look, I mean, as things stand at the moment, in terms of those forward options that have been linked in this last 10, 12 hours, the two that have come into the fore is Jean-Philippe Mateta, which I think, I'll be honest here, feels very unlikely based on even what me and Frank have said so far, and Johan Wissa. So that is where we are in terms of the forward options. Look, we're going to squeeze in a very, very first quick break of the show for listeners that are on audio to this show. And we have already got nearly 10,500 of you that are watching Last Word on Spurs live on deadline day. Thank you ever so much for all your incredible support for the show. Please keep liking. Please keep subscribing to the show. Hit that notification bell. We'll be keeping you posted from now right until the deadline of 7 p.m. and beyond. I'm joined by Frank Thomas over at Spurs Related. They've been very busy this window. Please make sure you go and check Spurs Related out. They're doing a lot now of different kind of content over there. Spurs Related, match day previews, transfer shows. You've got it. They'll be you every step of the way, as will Frank be personally at THFC_Frank. Thank you so much, Frank. Right. Let's give you an update in terms of outgoings and where we stand at the moment. We have got some news through in these last few minutes. And depending on how you feel about certain players, this may be positives or negatives for you, depending on how you view the situation. There is now a suggestion and there is now feeling that Manos Solomon at the moment is now set to stay at Tottenham. That is the situation as of right now. Manos Solomon is set to stay put at Tottenham. Leeds have considered a renewed move after Bonate's deal collapsed, but Thomas Frank has reportedly seen enough to give the winger another opportunity. Unless something dramatically changes late in the day, Manos Solomon will remain a Tottenham Hotspur player. Let's get your news on that, Frank. That big breaking news coming through to us. Manor Solomon set to stay at Spurs.
Yeah, I mean, I'm slightly surprised that he's not been picked up this summer because he had a really good season last year at Leeds, and in a difficult league as well, right? He won him the league in the last minute of the season. He had a fruitful season. So I'm a little bit surprised that no one's picked him up. Listen, if Thomas Frank thinks he can get a tune out of him, then that's okay. That's he's obviously a talented guy. The worry for me is that we're talking again about another player who you can't really rely on injury wise, and we've got quite a few of them up top, and that's a concern. So in that front line, that you go, are they going to be consistently fit? And he's probably one that you'd veer towards no. But listen, as I say, if Thomas Frank thinks he can get a tune out of him, I'm a little bit surprised. I mean, it's obviously very difficult to just say we're going to sell this player if demand isn't there. You've got to have demand, for what you are supplying. But yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit surprised by that. Yeah.
Yeah, so that is the news where we are on Manor Solomon right now. We do understand that Yves Bissouma is still available as things stand, and Spurs are hopeful they are going to see if they can move Bissouma on between now and the end of that deadline. Obviously, at one point last week, it looked like a move for Bissouma was close to Galatasaray. That fell through because there were concerns over his physical condition and the fact that Galatasaray wanted someone immediately available. I just wonder, Frank, from your perspective, how much easier will it be to integrate or reintegrate someone like Bissouma that has already, on a number of occasions under Thomas Frank, already failed the timekeeping aspect of turning up, just on time for work? Does that worry you, or do you think, if needs be, we can reintegrate him? And where does he stand in the pecking order for you? Does he now stand even behind the likes of Archie Gray, for example? What's your thoughts on Bissouma and his future at the moment?
I mean, I think in Thomas Frank's mind, he's probably going to be the final choice in the pecking order. But listen, I get the impression and that Thomas Frank is someone that is probably willing to allow people a chance to change and a chance to adapt and whatever. And so if that is something that has to happen, then I think he'll be open to it. He's obviously a face that everyone enjoys in I guess behind the scenes in the changing rooms and things, that you get the impression that he's one that is close with a lot, Bissouma. So I don't think that will be an issue from the players' sides. I think there'll be probably a reluctance maybe from Thomas Frank and co to maybe have him in that team. And as I say, I think there will be much more of a focus on using Archie Gray and Bentancur Palinha, obviously sort of in that sort of deeper role. And so I think he's going to be quite far down that pecking order, to be honest. I'm not sure he's at the level to be playing in the Champions League and things. Maybe in that game against Doncaster, he might get a little run out if he's still here. But
yep.
I don't see him really being used too much this year.
I suppose also the key on him, Frank, is where would he end up now? Because obviously clubs at this stage in the window, you're looking at who might be available for him. There's been suggestions that Everton may look at Bissouma. I mean, is there anyone outside Bissouma for you, anyone outside Everton for you that may look at Bissouma and think he's a viable option on this deadline day? Any Premier League clubs come to mind? Would a Brentford maybe come in for him? I'm just trying to think if there's a deal to be done there with Wissa the other way. I mean, what's your thoughts about maybe there being a trade-off here with certain players, or even, dare I say, Aston Villa, for example, if Tottenham could somehow engineer a very, very late move, which I feel is unlikely at this stage for Morgan Rogers. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I would probably say I think the most likely thing is that he ends up going to Turkey, because I think their window's still open for another 10 days or whatever it is.
And Saudi's also an extended 7-day window. Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
So I would imagine that's probably the most likely. But in terms of the Premier League, I mean, listen, Bissouma's a good player. Bissouma's talented enough to be a good player, and would, as he was at Brighton, I think he probably suits being at a slightly smaller club a little bit more than maybe being at a club that wants to challenge at the top. But if he went to a Wolves, West Ham, Everton sort of club, that that mid-table sort of Premier League side, I have no doubt that he'd be a good player. It's just the right manager probably has to get hold of him and get a tune out of him. Because we saw him at times under Ange with incidents where he was left out. It obviously happened again under Thomas Frank. Now Conte wasn't obviously a big fan, so. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly an issue behind the scenes there, but I think if the right manager gets him, I think you get a very, very talented player for probably 20 million quid or 15 million quid. And, a guy who was in the semi-finals and the final of the Europa League last year was brilliant. So you're getting a guy with an abundance of talent for quite a cheap price. You just need to somehow coach. I know he's obviously getting a bit older, but you need to somehow coach that bit out of him, the behind the scenes.
Yeah, we certainly do. Also on the show, delighted to have him here. We've got the one old Danny Kiriakou. Dan, lovely to have you here, bud. It feels like it's that time of the window where we're scrambling, we're searching. We're not advancing, we're not edging, we're not moving that much. It's Tottenham on deadline day, Dan. What are you making of it, mate? Lovely to have you here.
Sorry for being a bit late, Ricky.
No problem at all.
I was doing a Ricky Sacks there.
I thought we'd done a Basuma and we've just docked you 2 weeks later to try and send you off to Galatasaray. We can't send a Greek off to Turkey, though, because I know what the fundamental difference could be in that.
Yeah, that would definitely be a bad idea.
Difficult one.
It'll be a difficult one, yeah. No, look, I personally, look, there's a lot of rumours. There's a lot of rumours about Muani. There's a lot of rumours still about Lookman.
Yep.
I still feel we'll get one at least. I'm hoping we can get 3. My dream right now would be Colin Muani. I think I've wanted him for a while. I think I wanted him before he moved to Paris Saint-Germain. When he moved to Paris Saint-Germain, I wanted him. I think there's a player in there, and for someone who's as versatile as him, it really could be a game changer for us. And if the rumors are true that Solanke could be out for an extended period, for me, it'll be the highest negligence from the football club if they don't go for another attacker like someone up front who can play up front, whether that's a Lookman or it's a Solanke, Lookman, or if it's Kolo Muani. They have to get one of them. And to be honest with you, I'd be happy with either or, because they're both very versatile players. They both can play up front. They both are good players. Look, the dream would be to get both. Go and get Muani on a permanent contract, because I think he could be our striker for years to come, and go and get Lookman because he can play left wing, and it would completely change our whole transfer window. It'd be the best transfer window by a mile. But look, I know there's been some murmurs from Matt Law as well. I'm just, Rick, I was saying to you last night, I'm just hoping we don't see early at 10:30 or 11 o'clock, that alley goalpost. Tottenham are now done for the day. Their business is done. They're unlikely to sign anyone. Oh, because that I think would just send the Tottenham fan base into a meltdown.
I mean, I'm only guessing and gauging. I think at this stage that they must know the situation around the fact that at this precise moment, whether they've got confidence of Solanke coming back or not, the way it would be, we're currently got only 2 strikers on the book, and both are fairly injury prone. And I think we all, recognise Solanke's work, what he did last year in terms of helping the club to win, obviously Europa League final in Bilbao, and the role he played. But the problem has been with Solanke, really, since he's come to us, he's had a number of injuries, and he never had one at Bournemouth. You just couldn't make this up. And with Richarlison, Richarlison's best goal return is 13 goals in a season. So how can you have confidence that he's going to keep fit? Look, we're going to stick with outgoings for a second. We're going to come back to Dan in a second. We're going to go back round to Frank if we can. We're hearing news, Frank, with regards to outgoings right now. And sorry, guys, to bore you. I know everyone wants about incomings. We'll go back round to the incomings soon, we will. But just to cover the outgoings of where we are, Frank, we're hearing suggestions at the moment that Girona are planning to sign Brian Hill, but that is on the basis that the player terminates his contract with Tottenham. Give me your thoughts on that, Frank, and how likely you think that will be Tottenham would terminate his contract at this stage. I think he has got between 6 to 12 months left on that deal as things stands, Frank.
Yeah, sorry, just very quickly as well. Johan Wissa is here we go to Newcastle for 55 million quid.
Okay, so that news coming in. So Johan Wissa to Newcastle. Here we go there. So I think we can cross that one off the list as well in the morning. So Openda, no longer an option, nor is Johan Wissa if Tottenham are looking in the forward market. Frank, thank you, Frank, for that update. Let's steer you back to Brian Hill and give us your thoughts on him.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue this goes down as possibly the worst signing I've ever seen at Spurs in terms of what they paid. And I mean, the fact they lost 30 million quid on Eric Lamela and then loaned Gil back the following year. I mean, it was just ludicrous business. I get there's probably a talent there, but we've seen it very, very rarely. I mean, listen, I think this is probably something that's going to happen. I think at this point, obviously, he's just come off the back of an ACL injury. His value is probably, and his stock is probably at an all-time low. And so, you can try and sort of fight around and try and get a little bit of money for him. And I do get that idea. But if there's literally no demand and no one's going to pay any money for him, then I think you're better off just getting rid of the guy, because and I'm quite against that usually for certain things. But in this case, I mean, I'm not sure what other options you've really got if demand is so low.
Yeah, what do you think on that for you, Dan? Do you think Brian Hill, I mean, a situation where he wants his contract terminated to move on, do you think at this stage that's more beneficial just to get his wages off the book? I can't imagine they're massive wages, but the fact of just even, freeing up a space in the training ground, I know he's not on the squad list, but would just be an advantage of getting him out the door, do you think, today, Brian Hill, if needs be?
Yeah, I think they have to. I think, look, are we going to really get any money for him, to be honest with you? And it's kind of like, just cut our laurels with him and just cut ties and just let him go and play for Girona, because it doesn't seem that they're going to give us any sort of money for him. I did hear that there was possibility they were going to extend his contract another year, then send him out on loan to Girona. And if that does happen, I get it, but it's kind of like, well, do they want to keep paying him? And are Girona going to pay if it's a loan for his wages? I don't know how much his wages on. I'm sure they're not crazy wages. But look, if Tottenham have realised, I think, with Brian Hill, that it probably was one of the worst signings they did. The fact that we signed him to kind of replace Lamela, and the fact that we went and gave Sevilla Lamela, and then he actually didn't end up going on loan to them as well. So it's like we basically just gave them everything for nothing. So look, I think Brian Hill, just if the club are happy to it, let him go. Frees up some money from the wages, and we do need to get a few out the door, to be honest with you. We really do. And do you know what, Ricky? The fact that the fact that it's funny that he's pretty much our second longest serving player from Ben Davis, which is absolutely absurd. Remarkable. It's insane. Yeah, I can't believe I'm actually saying that, to be honest with you.
Is he standing for the testimonial, Dan? Is that what it is with Hill, standing for the testimonial?
Could you imagine? Could you imagine if they could give him a testimonial? Like, it would just be laughable, really.
I'll tell you what, you have to laugh or you cry at the situation with Brian Hill.
It's true.
It's worth saying, as Frank has said already on this show, that the Saudi window and I think, forgive me, you said, Frank, sorry, the Saudi window, and forgive me, what other window did you say is still open for potentially another 6-7 days?
Turkish.
So the Turkish window and the Saudi window are open for another 6-7 days, which of course does mean that there is no real urgency if a club does come in from those respective countries to get that deal done today. It could still move beyond those windows. But as things stands at the moment, Brian Hill remains a Spurs player unless we hear more. So look, we'll keep an eye on that. And as where things stand, we'll of course update you as we go. So that is where we are. Manor Solomon in this last half an hour, unless anything massively changes in terms of his situation. Manor Solomon set to stay at Tottenham, despite there being some interest from Leeds United. And Brian Hill wants his contract torn up if he is to leave the club on this deadline day. And Yves Bissouma, we are still expecting a potential move for him, despite reports last week suggesting his move is off to Galatasaray. Keep an eye out on potential Premier League interest. We know Everton and West Ham are active and in the market still for midfielders. Could a bid come in there? Look, we're going to go for our next break of the show. For our listeners on audio, we've already got over 15,500 of you that are watching Last Word on Spurs live on this deadline day. Thank you so much for all your incredible support for the show. We are stretching out the cast list throughout the day. We're on the 9 a.m. Is this the graveyard shift, guys? Or is it late one? That's the graveyard shift. This is the early shift. This is the shift that no one really wanted to do because they're thinking it's early days. It's got to heat up. This is normally the time you always hear nobody's coming in. We're not going to get anyone. Everyone's losing their minds. And we're hoping that Johan Langer and Fabio Paratici are out somewhere, scaling the market, scaling somewhere to bring players into the football club, despite there being suggestions that Tottenham at the moment are not actively pursuing a striker on this final day. That is on the back of the news for those that have missed it or haven't heard, that Solanke's ankle injury is worse than first feared, and that will be assessed during this international break to understand the extent of it. There is confidence that it's not bad as first feared. God, how many times have we heard that about an injury, guys, down the years? We've heard that so many times. It does obviously mean Richarlison is our only, at the moment, attacking outlet. I mean, let's zip back round to the centre-forward situation, Dan. Frank just told us there, here we go on Johan Wissa. He's no longer an option. As things stand, Colin Mawani, Tottenham yet to revive their interest on him. Jean-Philippe Mateta, another name mentioned. How difficult is that going to do with Crystal Palace? And also Lois Openda, that's also off the table. He's off to Juventus. In terms of available forwards right now, Dan, how desperate can we get?
As desperate as Tottenham can ever get, to be honest with you. I don't think we've ever been more desperate. You mentioned it again, Rick.
Well, there's definitely been more times we're desperate, but it does feel desperate right now.
Yeah, it literally, it really does, because we are one injury away from having no striker in the squad. Like, if Solanke is out for a couple of months, to say his ankle injury is as bad as what some people were saying, and then we have Richarlison. Richarlison cannot go through this season without any other cover or support, because it's just inevitable when Richarlison's going to get an injury. It's not even if he's going to get an injury, it's when he's going to get an injury. And if we go into a Champions League campaign with 4 competitions, and just say, for example, this is Tottenham's luck, right? The next game after international break or during international break, Richarlison gets injured, right? Or when he comes back, first game, gets injured. And then the only striker we've got in the squad who can play up front is Tell. That is so worrying, right, for our campaign, because it goes from being optimistic as we actually could have an enjoyable campaign up until January and see what happens, to then everyone's in absolute meltdown because we've got no strikers and we've got a young kid who is not proven as a striker. So yeah, it's going to be very worrying. They have to bring someone in. They have to. I can't see a world where we don't. I mean, I know we've seen worlds where we don't, but I'm trying to be optimistic as possible, because it just doesn't make any sense that we don't go for another attacker. And I personally think, right, if it's not Muani, it's got to be Lookman. It has to be, because they've got. I think they've got the option to pull that trigger if they want to. I think that still could be done very quickly if they say
what's delaying it, Dan, for you? In terms, are you surprised we haven't accelerated that yet for Lookman? And do you think that will accelerate now on the back of the Solanke injury? What's your gauge on that for you, Dan?
Yeah, I think maybe it is the fact that Kolo Muani has become available, so to speak. So this is kind of like one of those things where, if there's ever a Daniel Levy type of deal, this is a Kolo Muani type of deal, because it's an opportunity, right, which we didn't have before. We have gone for the player before. He has turned us down, but also just to bear in mind, he turned us down because he wanted Champions League football, right, which I don't blame him. So this is kind of like your probably only chance to go and get someone like him, because I reckon if we don't snap him up now, next window or two, he'll be snapped up by someone else. So this for me is a no-brainer. I mean, personally, I think we should be going for both of them, to be honest. And I think we could do a deal for both of them. But yeah, I think we have to get one of them. Mateta, I would love Mateta, right? But
I think we know
can't.
It's going to be hard, isn't it? How do you go back to Palace now after those negotiations with Eze and try and get him out of there? And we'll bring Frank in a second as well, Dan. It's difficult, isn't it? Difficult.
There's no way, Ricky, we're going to get Mateta now. Especially, just say, if they go and get rid of Guehi now, they're not going to go and get rid of their striker as well. It will just be off limits. I think Glasner will have a meltdown if they sell Guehi and Mateta on the last day of the window. It'd just be impossible. And they're setting themselves up for even more failure. And they're doing all right now, but they don't know how they're going to transition if Guehi does sign on the dotted line for Liverpool. And for me, the fact that Liverpool could potentially be signing, what they will be signing, Isak and potentially Guehi on deadline day, tells me that you can go and sign players on deadline day if you really want to. So I don't buy this. I don't buy this thing that, because it's just an opportunity. If Tottenham wanted to, they could go in right now, bang, and go and get Mateta, Lookman and Kolo Muani. Yeah, they can do it if they want to. I mean, Aston Villa, it looks like a signing. No, not Paqueta. Jadon Sancho. Jadon Sancho. And so it's all, and the fact that Newcastle have gone for Wissa today as well shows me that you can go and do those deals straight away. So I'm just a little worried that we haven't heard anything solid just yet, but I'm still hopeful.
Okay, listen, and let's come around to you, Frank, and circle back round on where we are on this on the striking situation. And I can just tell you, as we are talking to you right here, we spoke. Sorry to go back to outgoings, guys. No, absolutely everyone doesn't want to talk about outgoings. They want to talk about incomings. There are suggestions that, despite us being hopeful, Basuma will find a way out of Tottenham. As things stand at the moment, Basuma is likely to remain at Tottenham beyond this season's transfer deadline, despite strong reports linking him with a move to Galatasaray. That coming out from Rahman Osman, obviously journalist and co-host of the Made in Africa podcast, quite normally fairly close to knowing a lot about Basuma and African players. So I would just say keep an eye on that. So that news again, Basuma likely to remain at Tottenham beyond this evening's transfer deadline, despite strong reports that Galatasaray will revive their move for him. Frank, let's come back round to you. Striker-wise at the moment, like Danny says there, in his opinion, he thinks if the club want to, they could get a deal done for Ademola Lookman. They could get a deal done for Colin Mawani. Do you share Danny's view they could get those deals done if they wanted to?
Yeah, totally. I mean, and that's kind of the bit that suggests to me that maybe they aren't going for these guys. And this is just a hunch, right? That a lot of what Johan Lange, since he's been here, has done, right? And this whole maybe gimmick, if you want to call it, that he works in silence, as much of a joke as it kind of is, it does feel like we do this quite often, and things kind of come out of nowhere at times. So, and a lot is quite quiet around their business and then how they operate. So, my money would be on, and this is again a hunch that, and maybe this is also cope as well, that if they wanted Lookman and Lookman was really their priority for a winger, they could have got Lookman last month, because Lookman's there for 40 million or 45 million. It's big money, but it's for a club of Tottenham stature, it's not insane money. So if that was the one that they really wanted, then I think that would be done. Even up until now, I think that would be done, or pretty much done. And so that's the bit that kind of gets me, that unless it is a real panic, but I think something else is probably going on quietly. And then I think if that falls through, Lookman will be the one they'll go for. Kolo Muani kind of the same. I mean, yeah, I'm a little bit stumped at kind of what is going on. I think, as I say, you need.
I can help you that with Frank. Not much at the moment.
Yeah, exactly right. You need bodies, as I said earlier on. You need quality bodies. It's as a matter of, you need quality and quantity, and you want players that come in and do make an impact and do improve what we've got. And I look, Mateta would come in and do that. I think Mateta's a top player, but I don't know what you get Mateta for now. Interestingly, though, I know they signed a striker last night from Getafe. They signed Christian Tasuce.
Yes, that's right. Yes,
young striker or whatever. So maybe there's something in that. But I mean, they could also be signing a second striker. I mean, I'm a little bit. I mean, if Mateta was one you maybe could have got in June, July time.
Do you agree, Frank? I'd look at the optics of that. I mean, how are we going to get out? I mean, I think he is their top scorer now on deadline day. I mean, I don't see Steve Parish doing a deal with anybody. But Tottenham probably the most unlikeliest club to do for, Frank. Do you agree? It's as if they're going to let him go. I don't think it's going to be at Tottenham. Do you, Frank?
No, I agree. I mean, as I say, it could have possibly happened a month ago or whatever, but I think it's crazy to suggest it could probably happen today. So solely because that they're in a good place. First of all, Palace, they're doing well. They're in a good place, and given that Gay's probably going to go, Eze's obviously just gone. I don't see him going as well this late. As I say, a month ago, if you'd gone there with 40 million or 50 million, whatever number they were talking, you probably could have got that deal done. But today, I think it's highly unlikely.
Agree. I mean, like I say, at the moment, Dan, in regards to what we've got else out there, I'm looking at other options. There were links. I mean, again, in this last 24 hours, I think, again, it's so highly unlikely. I mean, Rafael Leao was being mentioned, Dan, but I mean, that's going to cost you upwards of maybe even 100 million before you even look at his wage packet and what that would dictate and bring to the football club. Morgan Rogers, another name mentioned as well. I mean, Dan, are these just almost fantasy dream names at this stage in the window? Can you see anything like this happen on deadline day? We had Adam Hotspur on the show last night. Obviously, Ads was suggesting that given the nature of, trying to get players over the line when it's such a high price package deal and the wages, that is so hard to try and do within 24 hours. Do you share that view as well, how difficult that would be to do?
I think it's not beyond the realms of impossibility. It can happen. Whether it will happen is a different situation. I was always optimistic that if Tottenham really wanted to act like a big club, they could go and slap money down, because at the end of the day, Rick, money talks, right? And as much as people might not want to agree with it, money does talk. If Tottenham were to go and slap in a £90 million bid right now for Morgan Rogers, it's going to be very hard for Villa to turn that down, that sort of money, right? And that's the way. The thing is, it's like everything in life, Rick. Everything has a price, right? So it's whether or not the clubs want to do business for the right price. And majority of the time, if the price is right, they will do the deal. And if Tottenham were to say, look, we'll go and give you £90 million and we'll pay 60 million up front, are Villa going to say no to it when they might not get that sort of money again next season or something like this? As much as it will weaken their squad, right? Yep. It's a lot of money to turn down. So look, if Tottenham really want to, they could go and try a big. Now Liao again, I think is going to be an even harder deal to do. They are dream signings, don't get me wrong, but
they are.
Look, I was optimistic in some of the group chats, and I was saying, look, it is possible, but the difference is whether Spurs will do it is another question. I think at this point now, it doesn't look like they are going to go for these type of players. And for Lookman, the only thing with Lookman, the only thing I think about when I think why they haven't done it sooner, and I think it's because they really were trying to get Savio through the door and one of those type of players, because that's exactly who they want. And I think someone like Lookman is more of like the opportunity, like if they can't get the others done, because he's still a very good player who's very versatile. He won't cost an arm and a leg. And I think it's still possible up until the end of the window, until deadline day tonight. So I think what's going on is I think they are looking at trying to get someone like Muani in. If it doesn't happen, I think they will go for Lookman on the sort of final hours of the window. That's what I believe. I'd be shocked if they go for two. Maybe they might go for a centre back, but I think right now the priority has to be an attacker. I think within the club, it's got to be an attacker. I think maybe the feeling is within the club that it is an attacker, because they can't seriously sit there after, especially watching that game against Bournemouth the other night, and say that we don't need another attacker. It just be setting themselves up for failure after what we could say is, even though we could say right now that it's one of the best windows we've seen Spurs have under this ownership, it's still not enough, because you got to remember, we've got to close the gap on the teams above us. And the fact that we did finish 17th, and the fact that we are in the Champions League, you've got to improve that squad. And 3 players who go straight into the first team, yes, it's amazing, right? Considering the way that Tottenham usually do business, and we only normally get 1 player and nowhere near of the quality that we have brought in. For example, with the Simons and Kudus and Paulinho. But we know we need a lot more. So I'm just hoping that they are going to do something that we don't normally see with Spurs and go and get another first team player, at least, that can come straight into that first 11, because we so badly need it. We really do.
How would you rate the win at the moment, Dan, for you? If it was a sham start right now, what would you give it out of 10?
I'd give it a 7, I'd say 6.5, 7, because it's amazing, but we still need more. Yeah. If we go and get a Lookman, I'd say that's an 8. You go and get a Akanji, it's an 8.5. You can get a Kolomuani as well, then that's a 9, maybe even 10 out of 10 window. The only thing that would be better than that is going to get like maybe instead of a Lookman, it's a Savio and a left back. Then you'd say that's a 12 out of 10 window. But
I really think that. I think if we somehow end up bringing in a forward and bringing in a centre back, if they're a decent level, like you said, the players that we're looking at, if it's a Lookman and a Kanji, I have to say, I think not everyone would agree with this. I think that would probably be, ENIC's best window they've ever had at Tottenham. I honestly think I go that far to say that. I mean, Frank, would you share that view as well? If Tottenham were on this deadline day to go and get an Ademola Lookman and bringing in a Kanji, given what they've already gone and got so far this window in terms of tying down Romero to a new contract, bringing in Polina, of course, on loan, bringing Kudus through the door, bringing Xavi Simons through the door. Would you agree it's been ENIC, Daniel Levy's best window at Tottenham? Frank, get you to unmute from your end on that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm always a little bit reluctant with rating transfer windows, certainly after like the 2022 one where we signed many players and won the transfer window, and then we kind of saw how that worked out. But in terms of the individuals they brought in, if someone said to me at the start of the window they were going to get Paulinho, Kudus, Xavi Simons, I would have been delighted, like absolutely delighted. I think the narrative that maybe we've been fed, whether it's true, not true, whatever, the narrative that's come out of the media probably puts a dampener on the whole thing. But we've signed 3 great players. I'm a fan of Mateta as well. I think there's a lot to offer, and you've got Takai, who the jury's out, but we they brought in another young player. Fine. If they were to go and get another 2 or 3 in a Lookman, Kolo Muani, a Kanji Ake, whoever it be, we're talking. Sorry, there isn't Fabrizio Romano. Tottenham make contacts for Randall Kolo Muani.
Okay, that's coming through to us. Okay.
Feels like
so
good timing.
That is good timing. Okay, let's bring that into the show. We're hearing from Fabrizio Romano. Frank, so much for that tee up. That news coming through to us here. Tottenham have made contact for Randall Kolo Muani overnight. They are exploring the conditions of this deal. Spurs have been informed of availability of the player, but the serious interest also depends on a fee and numbers, as PSG want an obligation to buy guaranteed. That is coming through to Fabrizio Romano right now. Frank, give me your news on that. We spoke about Muani here at length. I just asked you about what this window would look like if Tottenham do bring in a forward, do bring in another defender. Muani, forgive me if I'm wrong, there were suggestions, I think he rejected us in the past window, wasn't it? In January, obviously, which led to Tottenham's interest in Mateta. Muani, I've heard, again, different mixtures of feelings on the player. Give us your feeling on that, Frank. I mean, what kind of player would we be getting in Kolo Muani, in your opinion, Frank?
I mean, that certainly does worry me a little bit, the whole January situation. And that's something that maybe put me off of the idea of it a little bit. But what I think he does give you is something that we don't actually have in that front line, other than maybe Kudus, is proper pace and power. And I think Thomas Frank likes that idea. You've seen it. He likes to have pace, power, and sort of directness of players in that front line. And so I think what I like about this sort of deal is it is the complete opposite to having Solanke and Richarlison, in that he is a proper handful. And I think that's a positive. I mean, as we say, that he's gone through, he's had a number of different strikers in his time, Thomas Frank, where he's had, but different ones. Wissa played as a 9 for a long time. And then you've got Tony, who is more of a Solanke sort of type. He holds the ball up and he runs around a lot and he gets others into the game. So I think this would be one I'm up for. I think alone with maybe an option at the back of it or whatever would be a decent idea. I don't think it's enough, but I certainly think it would be a good start if that's what they're going to go for.
Dan, you were speaking about Muani only a short time ago for you. Obviously, now it looks like Spurs are accelerating that interest. They're in talks, they're in contact with Muani. How much confidence does that give you if they can get his deal over the line? You said they need a forward. He's a forward. I don't know what level you describe him as. What would you describe him in terms of his level at the moment? Is he a player that you could see would make an impact directly on the first team, or will he be a case of just waiting to see what form of an impact he could make?
See, Kolo Muani, I feel that he's at a good age as well. I think he's 26, if I'm not mistaken, right? And I completely agree with Frank. I think that he is exactly the type of striker that we need, and I think we actually want as well. I mean, I've heard things that he was one of the names that Frank actually wanted in the summertime when they were talking about strikers. But because we couldn't get rid of one of the strikers we had, we couldn't go for a striker. So if we do get someone like him, I think he's perfect for what we need. I think he's better than Richarlison. I think he's better than Solanke by a mile, in my opinion. And I think people need to remember that he's just about to come into his prime. And you've got to look at players like Wissa and Mbeumo at Brentford, right? And how Frank coached them into becoming the players that they were, right? Considering where they came from. And I think someone with that sort of pace and power and that technical ability as well, I honestly feel someone like Xavi Simons linking up with him, I think it's a match made in heaven, if you're asking me. Because if you look at how Xavi and Openda were, and you kind of see that dynamic, and you watch who Muani actually plays, and he had a really good stint at Juventus as well. And I think we need someone like that as a different type of player up front. And also the fact that he is versatile and he can play as a left winger, he can play as a right winger, gives us so much versatility. And look, I think Kolo Muani is a no-brainer right now. I think we have to go for him. And I know from what we were seeing on Romano's tweet that PSG want obligation to buy guaranteed, which I think a lot of the clubs are trying to do at the moment, where they want, same for Lookman, it looks like we want they want an obligation. They don't want a loan with an option to buy, which is understandable. But I think you've got to do that now, and whether or not, I think where it comes down to is if Tottenham are going to do a deal like that, and it's going to be for 50, 60, 40 million euros, whatever it could be. I think it'll be between that region of 40 to 60 million euros. It could be where it's like similar to what I heard with the Lookman deal, where it's based on certain clauses are met and then the obligation gets activated. Like, for example, if we finish in the top 4, or if something, he scores like 15 goals or something like this. And yeah, I think he'd be a no-brainer. I think what would be an unreal situation if Spurs managed to get both Lookman and Muani on loans with obligations to buy, because it means they don't have to outright pay the money right now. And it gives us a very strong chance now to go and get top 4 for this season. Because I think if you go and bring in those 2 players, I think your target has to be top 4, because you've just gone and changed our whole front line to a level that's able to compete at that level, especially in like the Champions League, with the quality that you bring in. So for me, Muani is an absolute no-brainer. And if it is just him, it's still short, but at least we've got someone who is versatile. Exactly. And someone who I believe, and people want to talk about how good Frank is as a coach. So why can't we sit here and say that if we bring in Muani, he's not going to go up another level with someone like Frank coaching him, especially like Frank said, the way that he likes to play, the type of footballers that he likes to coach. I think he's perfect. I think he'll be absolutely perfect.
Do you agree on that, Frank? Danny said there he thinks he may even have a higher ceiling than Solanke, Richarlison. Do you share that view as well on Muani, or is it just too early to say, given what we've seen of him so far, initially in his career, Frank? What do you think?
I think the ceiling's very high. I mean, we're talking about a guy who 2 years ago had come off the back of a very good season in Germany, and there was talk of, I remember we were linked to him sort of when Kane went. We're talking sort of like 80 million quid, right? And he went to Juve and did all right in the last sort of 6 to 8 months. Whatever hasn't worked out everywhere, but we're talking about a guy who has, evidently had very good periods in his career. He's 26. He's played for France. He's played at the very top level in the Champions League, in 3 different European leagues. He's played for France, obviously in a World Cup final, the lot. That we're talking about a guy who, experience-wise, is up there. He's obviously very talented. As I say, I love the idea that he is a polar opposite to what we currently have. I think the fact that you can then have alternatives that are so different to each other, a bit like what I quite like about having Kudus and Johnson. They offer something so different that for different moments, different games, different situations, you can switch things up. And so that I'm a big fan of. And it's, as I say, you're probably going to get a guy for, I don't know how much it will end up being, but it's going to be nowhere near that 80 million mark that he was 2 years ago. And so Thomas Frank likes to get the best out of players, players who maybe have had some time, the younger players or players who maybe have dropped off a little bit. And we know that he likes to maximize their output. And so I think it would make a lot of sense. And I think it's one that maybe I probably haven't given enough thought over the last couple of weeks because he's been looking at he's going to Juventus or whatever. But he's certainly one that I'm probably coming around to the idea more and more as time goes on.
Yeah, I think one thing we must state with Lookman, and I think you have to remember, this is from Jason McGovern, bless him, who's messaging me away. Jason's going to shut the windows later on tonight. So you have to bear in mind with Lookman is that he will go to AFCON. Will go to the African Cup of Nations in December. And that means he will miss a minimum of 8 games. It could be a maximum of 11. I just wonder, Frank, on that point with Lookman, does that put a team off the fact that he could be missing that amount of games in such a crucial period for the football club in December? And is that maybe why they would maybe favour someone like a Muani that maybe wouldn't have a tournament mid-season, which would mean we lose him for quite a significant amount of games? What do you think on that, Frank?
Yeah, I think that's definitely something that's probably quite off-putting. Lookman's obviously a pretty good player. He's obviously quite an exciting player, and his numbers are very good. I mean, I guess the fear, obviously, was when he was a bit younger. I guess the fear is his record in the Premier League. You've only also got AFCON, which I might be being silly here. It is every 2 years, AFCON, I think. I want to say it. Correct me if I'm wrong. But yeah, so you lose, someone every 2 years, which is instantly a negative. So yeah, I mean, I can see why Spurs would be a little bit put off by the idea of Lookman, and I think also that the fear for me with Lookman is the rumours that his agent's been offering him around a lot this summer and whatever. My fear is that he's actually not gone anywhere, and it's deadline day, and his name is still a conversation. And so I wonder why, by this point, no one has picked him up. I know Inter Milan probably the closest, and that fell through. But why nobody has picked him up by this point is the bit that concerns me a little bit. I don't know if there's something that sort of they see that we don't, and so that I'm a little bit concerned by. But I do understand. I'd understand if they went for him. I'd also understand if they go, this isn't for us.
Dan and Frank, thank you so much. We're going to squeeze in our next break of the show here for our listeners and audio. We have got another update to bring to you on Manor Solomon. And guys, thank you ever so much for all your support for the show. We've got nearly over 20,500 of you that are watching us live on our X, on our Facebook, on our Twitch, and across our social media. Thank you for your overwhelming support during this transfer window. We want to bring you more. We most certainly do in terms of news to us. And like I say, helping us do that during the show at the moment, we've got the wonderful Frank Thomas over at Spurs Related. Please make sure you can go give them a follow and a watch and a listen to. Like I say, they'll be doing regular content on, of course, Spurs Related. Frank, THFC_Frank. And I've got to say, Frank's takes have been great so far. I'm joined by Danny Kiriakou. Dan pops up everywhere and anywhere. Well, I meant to see him on Saturday, but everyone know I had that drama with the fish. So I've had to do a here we go with the fish this morning first before I bring Danny on here. I know I had conversations last night after I come off the show about the bloody fish tank. It was absolute nuts. Only in my life does it. Oh, ask Danny, a Greek household. It all kicks off. You're just trying to settle everyone down. And we're Spurs fans. What more can we ask for? Listen, thank you ever so much for your support.
You had the fish we go, Ricky. You had the fish we go, mate.
We had the fish we go. We've replaced the one that's gone missing. We've got another one in. Don't tell me we're not adaptable. Don't tell me we're not able to make changes and adjustments late on. We've done our scouting. We've done our due diligence. We've brought them in, and we have brought them in. Keep liking and keep subscribing to the show if you can, guys, for us. Really appreciate all the support. Back round to Manor Solomon. We're hearing another update on Manor Solomon, reaffirming really what we already know. This is from friend of the show, Alistair Gold, who has said that with relation to Manor Solomon, that he's understood to want to remain at Spurs beyond this window. The club will still listen to offers for the player, though today, before all parties make a final decision. And alongside that, we're hearing Paul O'Keefe that is confirming Tottenham are now negotiating directly with Paris Saint-Germain for Randall Kolo Muani. Indications could be an initial loan. So that again, right now, Tottenham are negotiating directly with Paris Saint-Germain for Randall Kolo Muani, as indications are it could be on an initial loan. So it does feel like, boys, just to come back round to you, Frank, that this Muani one at the moment feels the stronger out the two. Despite there being interest in Lookman, it feels, Frank, to let you unmute there, we're stepping up our interest in Kolo Muani.
Yeah, it does feel that way. Which, as I said in the last couple of minutes, I think it makes a lot of sense. I like the idea of it being an initial loan. I think that's probably a sensible option. I think if that is the case, then I would like to hope they're going for another one as well, because they're not laying out a load of money now. That I'd like to hope that is the case. So in regards to that bit of news, yeah, I think that probably seems like the way it's going. I'm hoping that it's early enough in the day that it won't be the only bit of news we get today.
Hopefully. And Dad, just to get you on that news, I know you said you're quite a big fan of Kolo Muani. For you, is that positive news to hear that we have now engaged in talks directly with the club and are looking to maybe get this deal done, maybe initially on a loan, Dan, which obviously would mean there's a free up of funds there potentially, Dan?
It would be a great deal. I mean, my only concern, Ricky, is the fact that Romano is saying that they want Paris Saint-Germain apparently want a deal done with an obligation, not like an option to buy, because it kind of makes me feel like, well, then if Paris Saint-Germain will allow him to go on loan with no option or no obligation, right, then why wouldn't Juventus come back in and do a loan deal? Because he would go there straight away, right? It doesn't make sense, because the reason why Juve stopped the deal was because they couldn't afford the fee that they wanted, right? So it just doesn't make sense why he would come to Spurs on a loan deal. And the fact that Juve went and got Openda, and I can't remember what the deal was, but I know that it was definitely I can't remember if it's a loan with an option or anything like that. But the fact that they did sign Openda because Muani was too expensive, it just doesn't make sense why they'd let him go to Spurs on loan with no obligation or any big options included. So I mean, look, I feel that if we're going to do it, it's the only way it's going to get done is a loan with an obligation. That's my feeling on it. And whether or not Spurs are going to do that or not is another question. I really would love them to do it because I think we need it. But the only thing is as well, I think we do also need a Lookman because even though he is a versatile player, Muani's not really a creator. He is more of a striker. And I think Lookman you're more of a creator. I think he's got a bit of everything, Lookman. So it's kind of like, it's not really if I'm going to be honest, if I'm going to pick one of them, it's going to be Lookman. I'd rather Lookman out of the two, purely because I think he offers a bit more than what Muani offers us right now. But we do need both. We do need a striker and we do need a left winger. And I'm just not sure whether Muani will be as good as Lookman on the left wing. So when, say, Richarlison and Solanke are both fit and we have got them as options, if Muani is playing on that left, is he going to be enough for what we need on the left? I'm not sure. I don't know. Only time will tell. And that's a question we'd have to wait and see how Frank utilizes him if we were to get him. Yeah.
Interesting. I mean, do you share that, Frank? Do you share the concerns that Danny is there that with Muani might be seen as more of a central attacking focus rather than a creator? Would you say if we ended this window and it was just Muani, would you still have deep concerns by the fact that we know Kulusevski's out until the turn of the year? We know, of course, that with relation to Maddison, he looks like he's going to miss the majority of the season. How problematic is that for Tottenham? If Muani does come in, he is a forward and not a central, well, not a creator as such. Do you share those concerns, Danny, as Frank?
Yeah, I do. I think that would be a concern. I mean, against Bournemouth the other day, and I'm not in any way digging out Johnson or anything, but there was certainly, a redundant side of that pitch, it felt like at times when you're going forward. And that's solely because Johnson isn't that type of player. And I'm not, as I say, he has many strengths that a lot of that team don't have, but going at players and creating things isn't his forte. So I think you need someone on that side as well. And I know obviously Xavi Simons will improve kind of that line, that front line. But Kudus was being tripled up on, and it worked. And Bournemouth didn't really let us get out. And so Xavi Simons will obviously impact that and help us on that part. But I still think you need someone on that left-hand side. But then, as I say, it depends how bad Solanke is. And if this is going to be something that's going to keep, coming back and recurring, because if it is, then you need both. If not, then I would be prioritizing a creator on that left-hand side or in the middle as a 10 if Xavi Simons is going to play on the left, which I don't think will be the case. But, we obviously don't know what Thomas Frank's sort of main plan is with him. But yeah, I think a creator is probably more important because worst case, you've got Johnson who can play as a 9 or Tell can play as a 9. I'm not saying it's ideal, but that's of worst case scenario here.
I mean, Dan, you said there for you, maybe the confidence it gives you the fact that with Muani, because we're negotiating a loan with an obligation, there may not necessarily have to be a fee that's passed up front there, which means you have got money in reserve, Dan. Is that what's giving you maybe the confidence that I can see you on the way in the background as well there, that they may be able to get another forward option in because they're not actually parting potentially with any funds whatsoever, Dan, just to get you to unmute on that point?
Yeah, I do. Also, the only other concern I've got is whether they only go for one or two of them. Is the fact that the news about Manor Solomon as well. The fact that the news coming out this morning is that he wants to. I know Ali Gold has said it, that he wants to remain at Spurs, but Spurs are still open if an offer comes in for him, and that would be a bit worrying for me if he ends up staying, because it's kind of a bit of negligence again from the club side of the club's point of view that we haven't got rid of him, and the fact that he did so well in the Championship and Leeds didn't really come back into him is again quite telling for me. I don't think he's good enough at the Premier League level, but we've got an argument then. Is he better than Tell and Odegaard right now? It's hard to say. I mean, we haven't really seen him properly. If we're going to be fair to him, as much as I don't think he's a good player and I don't really want him at Spurs, if we're going to be fair to him, we haven't really seen enough of him at Spurs, just as like devil's advocate, to actually really judge what he could do in the Premier League. And if we do end up keeping him, then we have to go and sign a striker. So I could maybe understand it a little bit, that not that I agree with it, but I kind of will see it from the point of view that if we don't go and get a Lookman and we go and get Colin Muani and he stays, then he's got to be integrated into the squad to see whether or not he's going to play. Otherwise, it's just pointless having him here at the club, wasting wages on a player we're not going to use or utilize. So it's going to be a really interesting end to this window. And yeah, I think the fact that we have, if we do a loan, look, I'll be honest, Ricky, I don't think Spurs are going to get Muani or Ademola Lookman if it's not an obligation, a loan with an obligation to buy.
You think that's critical? You think the fact is it needs to be an obligation, not a loan directly. It has to be some form of obligation or option in there, Dan, one of those two?
I do, yeah. I think it has to be a loan with an obligation. I think both of them, because the fact that Bayern Munich had a bid rejected from Atalanta because they wanted just a loan bid with an option, and they said no, we want an obligation. And I think it's also the same goes for Kolo Muani, because again, it goes back to the point I said earlier. Why would Juventus not just do that if they knew? Why would Juventus not do a deal like that if they could? Right? They obviously didn't, because they know that they couldn't afford it. So, and they went for Openda. So that was their main guy who they wanted. They wanted Muani. So it just doesn't make sense why they would allow us to do it. If they did, it would be unbelievable business, right? Somehow, if Paratici can work his magic on Muani and Juventus and Paris Saint-Germain, it would be unbelievable bit of business. But then if they were to do that, I'd go all out for Lookman, or one of the two. You have to do the deal like that. If you can do a deal with a loan with an option with one of the two, then the other one has to be a permanent transfer, in my opinion.
Yeah, it does feel like, we're getting to that point now where as I said earlier in the show, there was those reports in the early morning that suggested, Dan, that Tottenham weren't going to bring in another forward. And I was thinking at the time, but how can you not bring another forward in? Solanke, despite there being suggestions and confidence, he's not going to be out for a long time. That would just leave Spurs with Richarlison being the only central focus striker. And you're thinking, how could Tottenham be in a situation where they'd only have the one striker in what could be a 55, 60 game season? For all what we've praised them for in terms of what they've done so far, by bringing in the likes of Pelina, by bringing in Kudus, again, by the fact they've got Xavi Simons over the line, which again has got a very, very high ceiling. We understand injuries are part and parcel of football and these things happen, but when the window is open, Dan, like it is right now, it would have been negligence to not go and try and get this area sorted, because everyone knows goals win you games. So I think whatever happens in these next, 7-8 hours, Dan, we have to come out of here with a striker, don't we? We have to. We have to come out of here with an attacking player at least, whether it's a creator like a Lookman, or whether it's a creator like a goal scorer like a Muani, or even a Mateta, for example. It has to be someone who's better than what we've got. And I do believe Spurs can do it. If they really want to push the boat out, they can do it. And I think they have to. I think I just, as much as I want to bang the Daniel Levy bus, right? Because you know how I feel about Daniel Levy. They can't just do it. It's just negligence of the highest order if we don't sign anyone. It just doesn't make any sense for me, especially the fact that Daniel Levy came out and said we want to win the Premier League and and we want to compete to win the Champions League. It would just prove again to fans that it's all talk and it's all nonsense, right? It's all for the media. It's all for the fans to try and hype them up, and maybe for the season ticket renewals. Who knows? but it won't make any sense to me. As much as I want people will be like, oh, but Daniel Levy is always going to do Daniel Levy things and this kind of stuff. Yeah, we just can't. It's just setting Frank up to fail. And not Frank Thomas Frank. Which is on that point. I mean, Frank, to bring you back in there, we said this morning, and we both said at the time when that news was breaking about the fact it was unlikely Spurs were going to bring a striker in. I said the same thing to you. It could be a 60-game season here, 60-match season. You can't go in there with with a couple of forwards. With all due respect to Solanke, his fitness record here has been a real concern for us. I mean, since he first signed for us, I think he was out of the first game of the season. I think against, I cast my mind back now, Leicester. I don't think he made that, again, appearance there. And I think again, you look at the fact of, with Richarlison, hate to keep sounding like a broken record. We're 12-13 game season in terms. Well, I'd say 12-13 game season. My apologies. 12-13 game goal record in terms of his being his highest in a season. That does concern you in terms of how we can try and keep this guy fit. I mean, whatever happens here, Frank, surely in these next 7-8 hours, by the fact now we're hearing that news, Tottenham are negotiating directly with Paris Saint-Germain for Kolo Muani. Do you think we can have confidence, Frank, that by the end of this deadline day, we're going to get a forward in here? We're going to see a forward holding a Spurs shirt up?
I mean, listen, as I said earlier on, any other club in the world should probably have confidence in this case. But given that it's Tottenham, I'm probably at an all-time low. But I do have confidence that they will probably get something done. I think ultimately they have to. And I mean, as Danny said, it's negligence if they don't. It's the simple, and that word obviously gets thrown around a lot with Tottenham and with Levy, and rightly so, by the way. But it obviously gets. But this will be, as Danny said, the highest order of it, because you're going into, as you say, what could be a 60-game season, at bare minimum 48 games this season, at very bare minimum. You've got to have options. And Kolo Muani makes sense. He can play on the left. He can play as a 9. I know Thomas Franks was a little bit worried if you had 3 number 9s because it can cause problems as well as being positive. But, as you said, Richarlison, before this season started, had played 29.5%, I think it was, of minutes since he joined Spurs in the Premier League. Obviously, Kane being here and Son being here maybe hindered that a little bit, so maybe they'd be a little bit higher. But the gist is still that he's missed too much football, and so that's kind of the worry with him. Since Solanke's been at Tottenham, he's also then missed. As I said, he's probably had 5 or 6 separate occasions where he's missed an injury with this or that or whatever, and a game here or 3 games here, and that's a problem because you have too much football to be relying on 2 guys who, when they're fit and firing, can be unbelievable assets and can really offer certain things in their own rights, but aren't always there to be relied on, and that's a problem in itself.
Yeah, this is a problem in itself. Look, we are going to go for our next break of the show for our listeners and audio. We have got Lubo in the background. We're putting him through casting and makeup right now. We're going to see him in a minute or so. That's going to join myself, Danny, and Frank on this show. We have got over 20,500 of you that are watching us live. Thank you ever so much for all your incredible support for Last Word on Spurs as we take you right through to the end of this transfer window on deadline day. Let's bring you up to speed with what we understand to be the latest with Spurs in the window as things are right now. We understand where we are at this present moment in time. Manor Solomon, let's focus on the outgoings in terms of outgoings that may not be outgoings anymore. Manor Solomon would like to stay at Tottenham. He would like to stay at Spurs. He doesn't really want to move and ideally would like to remain at the club beyond this deadline day. Although Spurs are understood to be open to offers for Manor Solomon still on this final day, the player's preference is to stay. We also understand that Yves Bissouma at this moment in time is also likely to stay on this deadline day. Reminder, the Saudi window that we mentioned, and forgive me, I think, as Frank said earlier, the Turkish window is still going to be open beyond the UK window. So these players could still move on despite the UK window coming to a close. We are also hearing reports that we understand that we've also got an indication Tottenham are now in talks, according to Paul O'Keefe, for Kolo Muani. They're negotiating directly, they are, with Paris Saint-Germain for the player. Crucially, like Danny has said, the club, from what we're hearing from Fabrizio Romano's sides, wants an obligation to buy. They want an obligation to buy. So we're going to bring in Lubo to the show. We've got the wonderful John Wobble also joining us very, very soon. Lubo, lovely to have you here from the Spurs 5. We've grabbed him early. We try and do Brighton early. It's been a crazy last 24 hours. Lubo, Spurs in the window. How are you feeling going into these final 7-8 hours?
We must get something done, surely.
Well, what for you now today, priority, what's the priority in your mind? What needs to happen?
Priority, there are 3 priorities, I think. You need a centre forward, you need a number 11, and you need a centre back. They've sent Vuskovic out. They've got to replace him. We're short at the back if Romero and Mickey get injured. And you saw on Saturday how short we are on the left-hand side. I felt sorry for Spence on the left. I really did. Johnson is just I mean, people will turn around and say he scores goals, but when he doesn't score goals, what does he do? Just nothing. It's like playing with 10 men. So for me, I'd be selling Johnson and bringing in a replacement there and trying to get a secondary. But we're missing out all over the place, aren't we? Mm. Who's left? Vlahovic is left. Colin Moani is left.
Yep.
I think I saw Vissa's going to Brentford. Is it for 55 million?
That's a here we go. Yeah, Wissa is on his way to Brentford. That's a done deal. He will. Sorry. My apologies to Newcastle. He will be a Newcastle player before the deadline. He will get that. Will get done. Yes, that will get done. Yeah. It will get done. So, I mean,
it's a shambles, isn't it? It is.
I think going into the final day now, I think for Spurs, they have to somehow come out of this window on this final day and achieve some form of a forward that can play across that front line. And I think they do also need, another defender, because they've now allowed Vuskovic to go out on loan to give them the best possible chance of course supporting the team. That's what we need. Lubo, we're going to come back around you in a second. We are hearing reports that Tottenham are now understood to be exploring their interest in Manuel Akanji, and it's being reported now that they continue to discuss a move away from Man City before today's deadline. But as things stand for Manuel Akanji, it's looking increasingly likely that he could stay. Lubo, in terms of defensive options and what we've got, would Akanji be one of the higher players on the list of names that have been linked for you out there, Lubo?
I think that would be a really good signing. Premiership proven. Proven in the Champions League as well. I think that'd be excellent. But we desperately need. To Sean McSweeney, I'm the most negative person on YouTube. Sean, it's been poor. The transfer window's been poor. I think we saw on Saturday how short we are. We are desperate. The squad's desperately short. There's nothing negative about actually speaking facts.
I think it needs more. But I do think, Luba, I think if you said to us before the window started, we get Kudus in, we get Polina in, we get Simmons in, I think that would give fans a lot of confidence. But where I do agree with you on is that if we do come out of the window today and we don't do any more, I do think we are short. And I think we're short at centre half, like you said, we're short in the forward area. There's no doubt about that. 100%. We will be short. We will be short.
But Ricky, it's great getting those three in. But it's great getting the three in, and they add to the squads, and you see an increase in the number of players if we don't lose Son and Maddison. So we've lost them, and we've gained three. Takai, who knows? Nobody knows.
We don't know. You're right. We don't know. Yep.
So we're actually one player better off in terms of Simmons has replaced Maddison, and we've got Polina, who is the 6. And Kudus, in effect, has replaced Son. So we've gained a right-sided winger and lost a left-sided winger. So, we are one Polina in front. And, when you're 17th, you need a lot more than that if you're gonna make up 28 points on the teams that are top 6.
So do you think, Luke,
top 6? Do
you think, Luke, then if at the end of this window today, if we go and do sign a Kolo Muani and a dare I say, a Lookman and a centre half, we were to get. I think we're living in a dream world if we get 3 in right now. But if we were to get 2 in, if we were to get a Muani in and an Akanji in, what would you give this window as a rating for you?
I'd probably, if we got a centre back in and we got a left winger in, I would probably give it close to a 10.
Well, okay. So that's so you feel today that it could all change for you today if we go and get a centre forward and a centre half. That will massively change your mind about the optics of this window for you.
Oh, for sure. Because then you actually brought 5 in, and you're not gonna cure all the ills in one transfer window. And Frank probably needs 4 transfer windows to sort out for him the perfect squad. So.
So there's work to do, Logo. There's work to do. Let's go round to Frank on this. Frank, look, that news coming through to us. Manuel Akanji. Obviously, there were suggestions that with Manuel Akanji, that Tottenham were genuinely interested in him. But as things stands at the moment, I think also you have to take into account it, Frank. City have not made a great start to the season. They've only taken 3 points out of a possible 9 so far. And you wonder how that much also plays into their mind by the fact that now it's increasingly likely that Akanji is going to stay at Man City. How much of a blow is that, Frank, if he does stay there?
Yeah, I think it's a really big blow. I mean, I've always been a little bit reluctant to sort of really praise Manchester City defenders because they play a style that they're obviously very good on the ball and whatever, but a lot of teams don't tend to get at them. And then we've seen a lot of times when we do it, and I remember Kane sort of playing against Ruben Diaz a few times and Diaz getting nowhere near him. And it was the second that teams put pressure on these guys, they crumbled a little bit. But I think Akanji and Nathan Ake, the pair of them actually, are two of the better defenders that City have. And so I think either one of them would be a seriously good signing that would probably go under the radar of how good it actually would be. They're both obviously experienced enough. They're both 30 odd. Both played in the Premier League, Champions League, both won the Champions League. I mean, they are, they've played at the peaks. And so I think they'd both be great signings. I think Akanji's probably the slightly better defender of the two, but then I think Ake being left-footed probably fits more what we're trying to do. So I'd be disappointed if Akanji doesn't happen, but then if they went and got Nathan Ake or something, then I'd be very pleased. So I think if they manage to pick up one of these two, it'll be an unbelievable coup, I think.
Okay, let's come on to you on that, Dan. We're hearing those reports. Manuel Akanji now increasingly likely to stay at Man City as things stand. I'm just looking at other options they've got. I think at this stage, given the fact you'd say Nathan Ake's the better profile of defender out of the two than the two when you compare, Akanji and Ake, that one obviously looks quite unreliable. It looks unlikely that's going to go ahead. In relation to Joe Gomez, that's another name that was mentioned in this last 24 hours. Apparently Spurs showing a degree of interest in Gomez. That, of course, is very much dependent on if Mark Gahey becomes a Liverpool player in these final remaining hours of the window. Where do you think we are, Dan, at the moment in regards to this centre-back search, if we get one?
I'd be disappointed if we bring in Joe Gomez, to be honest with you. I don't think he's good enough to be honest with you, in my opinion. Akanji and Ake definitely, I completely agree with Frank. They would go under the radar and they'd be absolutely a steal, really, if we could get one of those in. I think the more realistic one does look like it's going to be Akanji if it's anyone. He'd be a cheaper option as well, but for me, either or would be good. I think Ake would definitely suit us better because he can play as a left back as well, or left wing back. But then again, so can Van der Ven. Van der Ven can also play as a left wing back, like he does for the Netherlands. So you go and bring in Akanji, who does play a lot of the times as a left centre back. I think it'd be an absolute great bit of business if they could do it. For not a crazy amount of money either. So for me, Akanji would be my go-to this window in terms of realistically. I don't, unless they've got another name other than those two and other than Joe Gomez, I'm not sure where else we go. But I agree with Lubo. If we we have got rid of Vuskovic on loan, we have to bring in another one because the problem is, like for example, just look at Dominic Solanke, right? The fact that it potentially could be a 2 or 3 month injury. What happens if the window shuts and all of a sudden Romero gets an injury for a long period? Then we've got just Danso left. And then what happens in the week after that? Van der Ven gets an injury. Then we've got Ben Davis. So then our defense is completely shot, and we have got no one else to cover those players, and those players are going to get run into the ground, and then nowhere near, well, especially Ben Davis is nowhere near the level that could go in every single game, and we're going to have a repeat of what we saw last season with Ange, but just in a different way. It'll be more of the same of what we saw at Bournemouth, and I know fans don't want to hear that, but I believe that's what it will be because we cannot. Like Frank said, if we're going to potentially have a 60-game season, and you've got your best players injured, right? How are we going to perform at the levels we need to perform in the Premier League? Because I think this season, the Premier League is even more competitive than it's ever been. But the fact that a lot of the teams above us and the teams that we want to compete with, they've strengthened so much. Even Newcastle have strengthened. And people, that's gone under the radar a bit, how Newcastle have actually strengthened.
Quietly in these last few weeks, haven't they? They're quietly gone about their business and strengthened. Yeah, they have.
So, yeah, for me, it would be crazy if we don't get some players in. If we only don't get a striker in, say a Muani, and that's it, then it'd be great, but it'd also be very disappointing because we are taking a chance that one of our key players or two of our key players aren't going to get injured. Because if you look at what happened, if you look at the bench against Bournemouth on Saturday, we had to bring on Manor Solomon to fill the numbers. Like that's how bad it was. So that tells you everything you need to know about the depth of the squad at the moment. It is very, very, very slim. And that does worry me, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Lubo, you mentioned there your concern about centre-back area. You know, they obviously have brought in Kota Takai. Again, a young kid, we don't know too much about him. He's a promising prospect. He's seen as more than that. You know, there's a feeling that he could end up being in the first team. I think the concern would be as well, Lubo, you know the fact, with Mickey van der Ven and Christian Romero, because of their injury record last season, I think when you look at the optics, I think what they played between them, just nearly over half of the season, quarter of the season out, each together at respective times. How much of a chance are we taking now, Lubo, by the fact we've allowed Vuskovic to go out on loan if we don't bring in another centre-back in this window for you in this final, 5, 6, 7 hours?
Well, from what the reports have stated, Vuskovic wanted regular football.
Yes, yep.
So he's sort of probably forced a loan, which probably suits Spurs because, for me, if you brought in, say, Aki, who's 30 years old, you know, you're maybe on a loan just for a year. That would probably suit with Vuskovic coming back in 12 months' time, 10 months' time. In terms of centre-backs, and Romero and Van der Ven went away to America because of the injuries, where they were showing him how to change his running style to avoid putting or to put less pressure on the hamstrings. So far, so good. He played whatever games he played back end of last season in the Europa. Plus, he's played 4 games now this season, 4 competitive games without a problem. So hopefully, fingers crossed, you know, and you keep your fingers crossed every match that he walks off at the end of at full time and he's fine. So that hopefully will be better. And the fact that it's interesting because Frank is playing a very, very high line, isn't he, at the moment? So that could put pressure on him. The difference with Frank's high line and Angie's high line is that he's not inverting and he's pressing all around the pitch. So there's less space in between the players. But obviously there's the chance that Mickey's hamstrings will go playing that way. As far as Romero's concerned, the year before last, he played 34 of the 41 games. If they'd have treated and looked after him properly last season, I mean, he got injured against Man City. I think he carried the injury. Did he play against, I think he played against Ipswich and then he was out. And then he started training beginning of December.
Yep.
So, you know, a player after several weeks out needs conditioning. The body needs, the muscles need conditioning to get him back up to speed. It takes more than 5 days. They rushed him in against Chelsea and he's injured again. And this time he missed 24 games, something ridiculous. So the injury record for me with Romero should have been a lot better, but he was handled very badly. The reports we've read is that Ange rushed him back. The medical team said he wasn't ready. Ange wanted him playing, so he rushed him back in for the Chelsea game, and he was out then until I think for 3 months straight, wasn't it? I think he came back first week, second match in March. Was it Brighton at home? Not Brighton. Might have been Bournemouth at home. I think was his first game back. He missed 3 months of football. So for me, it is a risk. You do need numbers. Frank does play 3 at the back. And if you play 3 at the back, then really you should have 5 or 6 centre-backs that are ready to step in. At the moment, you've got these 2, you've got Danso, you've got Davis. Takai, we don't know. So at the moment, we're relying on Danso and Davis, and then Gray is the last resort, which you don't want.
Yeah. No, you don't. Look, we're going to let Frank and Danny summarise for us. And in the background, in casting and makeup right now, we've got the superb John Wobble and Dave from the Irish Hotspur. We're working the squad here. We're adaptable. We're flexible. Lubo's looking at me like he's impressed. We're trying, Lubo. We're trying. Let's go to Frank and summarise from some Spurs related. Frank, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show for the first time, having the first of many. Frank, give me your feelings on what you want to see in this deadline day and where people can find Spurs related. Closing in over there, I believe you're on at the moment. One subscription away from 4.3k. Get him over the line, please. Help Frank and the guys over at Spurs Related get over the line. Frank, give us your feeling on what you want to see between now and this deadline.
First of all, thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure. I've enjoyed it.
Pleasure.
I'd say 2 players coming in, and I'd be relatively happy come 7 o'clock tonight. An attacker of some sort. Obviously, I imagine there'll be more news at some point today about Solanke from someone somewhere. I saw Alistair Gold a little while ago said that still the thought is that it's kind of what Thomas Frank said, and it'll be after the break. If that's the case, then maybe the striker is less of a an important sort of move. So then I'd go for a winger. Obviously, Lookman we've spoken about, and Kolo Muani is obviously one that can do both, so it makes sense. And then I think an Ake, a Kanji sort of type player. I think that's someone that comes in and makes an impact. I mean, the thing I kind of like about someone like that is if you play Burnley away, for example, in the FA Cup, and you were to play Luka Vuskovic, I know he's obviously gone, but if he started that game or whatever, and we were to lose, you instantly go, well, why don't we take the cup seriously? If you go into a cup game and you have Ake or Akanji and Kevin Danso as your centre-halves, they're guys that are international level players. They're European level players. They're good enough to be your backups, but also you're not going to instantly roll over if they are your backups. And so I think that would be a really important signing if Tottenham got one of those City centre-halves over the line, because they're old enough as well, they're experienced enough, they're calm enough heads, and also you've then in a year's time, Vuskovic will be a year older. He comes in or he comes back or whatever after being in Germany for a year. So I think that would be a really good signing. I think that'd be an intelligent signing. And then I think a winger or a Kolo Muani type, that sort of attacker that's maybe a little bit versatile and flexible, it is a priority as well.
Frank, you've been a star. We might grab you a bit later on. Keep that phone on. Keep those notifications going. We might come and grab you a bit later on. Frank, you've been a star. Thank you so much. Dan, let's come over to you. Been a pleasure. Dan, let's bring you in if we can. Cheers. My pleasure. Dan, summarise for us what you want to see between now and in this window.
I want to see Rafael Leao. I want to see Yamil Lamau sign for us, and that's exactly what I want to see. But we know that's not going to happen, so I'll settle for Lookman and Kolo Muani. But yeah, look, I think my dream would be a Lookman, a Muani, however way it comes in, and a Kanji or an Ake, one of the two. If we get one, great. If we get two, amazing. If we get three, absolutely one unbelievable transfer window. And yet, look, I think I'd be absolutely. It's like I just want to see Spurs for once not do Spursy things in the transfer window when it comes to. It's like when we actually need players, like just go and get them for God's sake. Like we just need them desperately, right? And I just hope we're going to look here and sit here and we're not going to be like, oh, we've messed up again. We still needed that. It's going to cost us again. Because my biggest concern is that we all know as Spurs fans that we are going to get injuries. And when it comes to injuries with Spurs, it's always longer term injuries than we expect, right? It's always like the 2 or 3 months or the 4 months, and it's like we never get like, oh, it's just 2-game injury. It's like, and they're back after a few games. It's always a lot longer. And I just feel that we are going to get injuries, like all teams get injuries. And at the moment, we do not have the depth to cover 4 competitions. Like Levy and Co said that we wanted to go for is 4 competitions. We just don't have the cover. And that level of quality will drop if we get the injuries. So I'm praying if we get 2 of them, it's good. Still not unbelievable, but we just need to get it done. And I don't care however it gets done. I don't care if it's a loan, obligation, permanent, payment over 10 years, whatever Daniel Levy wants to do, just get the job done. And let's hope that we can get some players in, because I feel it's going to be a bit underwhelming, and you're going to get a meltdown on everywhere today if we don't get anyone in, especially. But yeah, we'll see what happens. I'm sure we're going to get some news in the next couple of hours.
We have to. Dan, you've been a superstar. We might see you a bit later on. Go to the gym.
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
Keep crunching for us. We're going to see you. We're going to let Dan go in now following this
Lubo,
break.
guys, see you later.
See you, Danny.
You're a superstar. In the show now for us, taking us through to midday and beyond. We've got the wonderful Lubo from the Spurs 5. We've got Dave from the Irish Hotspur. We've got the wonderful John Wobble. He won't mince his words. John will tell us where things are as a fact. Before we bring the guys back in, just a reminder of where we stand this transfer window on this deadline day. We understand Spurs are in talks to bring Kolo Muani to the football club. They are negotiating directly with Paris Saint-Germain. Will they get that deal done? Crucially, we are hearing from Fabrizio Romano that PSG do want an obligation included in any form of an agreement to get it done. But Paul has confirmed Tottenham are negotiating directly with Paris Saint-Germain for Kolo Muani. As things stand at the moment, both Manos Solomon and Yves Bissouma are likely to remain as Tottenham players on this deadline day. Crucial thing being here that both right now, Turkish window and Saudi window, they're open for a further week. So it doesn't mean they will obviously stay at Tottenham. They could move on beyond today. That's a crucial thing to say. And at the moment, Manuel Akanji, been a defensive target for Spurs over this last week or so. He is now increasingly likely to stay as a Manchester City player. Guys, like I say, we've got over 20,500 of you watching us live. Thank you ever so much for your support for the show. Please keep liking. Please keep subscribing. Let's bring in some fresh-faced cast members. Lubo, John Wobble. John, you can see John's watched Tottenham for a long time. Look at that face. That's a man that's been through the ringer at Tottenham. And we've got the wonderful Dave from the Irish Hotspur. Firstly, John, how are you, mate? Lovely to see you.
Oh, good, mate. Yeah, I've only got. I was working. I was doing a production. I only got up at 11. My missus, 2 minutes to 11, missus woke me up. She said, "Didn't you say you had to do a Tottenham thing?" I'm like, "Fuck me, quick, get a coffee on." So it was good. It was good getting delayed, to be honest. Like the last thing I checked before I went to sleep, of course, was all the transfers.
There goes out the window, John. All that situation around the fact of how we've got our cast members so prepared. They've been taken through the studio. They've been whisked through fashion. There you go.
Good to see Dave. Good to see Dave and Lubo again as well.
Yeah. Well,
likewise.
Yeah. Was it Chelsea away with Lubo? Yeah.
It was,
Thank you, Ricky.
Oh, was that a favour? Did you, Lube? John went to me. Can you get me to give Chelsea away? I put him in touch with Lube. I thought he would never speak to me again after that.
Yeah, it was typical Tottenham, wasn't it? I think they had to post in the first 5 seconds or something. It was unbelievable.
The old ear cupping incident. We've also got obviously the brilliant Dave from the Irish Hotspur as well. It feels like we have to go for a very serious next panel here because things are heating up. They are very much warming up. Dave, firstly, mate, how are you? Love to be back alongside us here.
Yeah, I'm keeping well. Look, to be honest with you, thank God the transfer window is coming to an end. I'm sick of the endless stories and everything else that don't end up coming to fruition. So thank God it's coming to an end.
Oh, mate, listen. Lovely to have you back alongside us here. It is. And like I say, guys, at the moment, we understand going into these, final few hours. Let's start with you, Dave, on this point. The focus does appear to be on a forward, and that looks like it's Kolo Muani as things stand. Spurs in direct talks with Paris Saint-Germain to get this deal done. And at the moment, in terms of the centre-back options, they're quite light. We've heard that news that as things stand, Manuel Akanji maybe no longer on Spurs' radar. Give me your thoughts, Dave, on what needs to happen, what could happen in these final few remaining hours before we go over to the wonderful John Wobble.
Yeah, look, it's clear that we still need to make signings. I think, look, Solanke's expected to be out for a few months, isn't he? I think that's the rumour sort of circulating and floating around. So that's probably why we're after Kolo Muani. I would still like another winger in the door as well if we could. And look, we need probably another centre-back and another full-back if we can stretch to it, because we've only got 3 full-back options as well. So we've still got a lot of our business to do. Like, don't get me wrong, I think the signings that we've made this summer have been very good additions. The likes of Kudos, Paulinho, Xavi Simons. I think they've been very good additions. And I think Spurs have gone at, the targets we brought in are much better than maybe what a lot of us were expecting for Tottenham to bring in. But make no mistake about it, we've still got a good bit of business to try and conduct. And we've left ourselves up until deadline day. Some of this we could have went and gotten done earlier, and we choose not to. So we're now scrapping around deadline day trying to get these signings in. Look, when it comes to Manuel Akanji, I said during the week, Ricky, I don't think Man City want to deal with Tottenham whatsoever this transfer window, to be honest with you. And then when it comes to Kolo Muani, he rejected us last January, didn't he? He ended up going somewhere else. So I'm not getting too excited until I see him on a plane over to London, to be brutally honest with you, because I feel like if someone else does come in and try and hijack the deal, he'll make the move, because I don't think he really wants to come to Tottenham Hotspur.
Dave, thank you so much for that. Let's go to you, John. Look, I know all of us here, we come in with slightly maybe pessimistic expectations on deadline day. What's your gut feeling, John, and what you feel we need going into these final few hours of the window?
Well, I think the consensus would be the same with the great majority of Spurs fans. It's quite obvious. The ideal would be, if you're going to just get two players in regards of a forward player, you would want a burly fucker capable of holding it up, because I've got no faith in Solanke and Richie.
There you go. We've gone early, 11:30. We put the quid in the
square.
early.
Well before the threshold, he's making a move. A burly fucker up front, I say it again proudly, to hold the ball up, who could also play out wide on the left and have a trick or two in to go to people and get to the bloody touchline across the ball back, So we need someone on that left wing. Odegaard and Tell, I'm not sure, were great acquisitions. We've loaned all our academy players out, which tells, they obviously need development. It tells me Tell and Odegaard, they're seeing them as match ready. I don't think they are. I don't think they're quite at it for men's football yet, from what I've seen. A bit lightweight. So I think, yet again, possible bad recruitment there, because it clutters up the squad anyway, And at the back, we need one of these modern hybrid defenders. Man City always seem full of them. They seem to at any point have 27 back four players available that can all play centre half, can all make the tackle, can all get on the ball, can play fullback either side, modern hybrid. So we need a hybrid player at the back, centre half, come left back, as we've all said, because you just need that. If you're going to really have any chance of competing in all the competitions, that's the minimum. I personally would have liked a backup six to Polinia. Yet again, not sure Archie Gray's quite ready yet. Sorry to cast doubt on him all, but I think
we'll bring you in, Lubo, a second. Don't worry, we'll bring you back in for that.
Saturday was a. I mean, look, obviously he's going to have a career. He's going to be a player. I'm not sure at what level, but I'm just not sure if Polinia takes a knock and you're playing, against Villarreal or somebody, if he's quite ready for that. To be honest, in that number 6 position. So I'm not sure about that. I thought Saturday was a real wake-up call, because it's been a great start to the season. I did say on Saturday night it was time for Thomas Frank to go. He's had long enough to turn it round. I was only joking.
Come on. We don't see anything in 4 games or 3 games. We've got to change him, haven't we? We've got to change him.
So I thought Saturday was a real, you just feel, oh, God, we're really lacking attacking quality here, So, we need at least those 2 key positions, if not a defensive midfielder, and possibly even a left winger and a centre forward. But obviously that's pie. It's not going to happen. All this, we shouldn't be having this discussion, should we? We should have filled all the main positions at this point, and maybe looking for a bit of exciting marquee type signing, cream on the cake at this point. Not
like a Morgan Rogers. Essentially.
It really is ridiculous, and Levy's made, and the recruitment team have made the window seem worse maybe than what it even is, and it is not great with what happened with Morgan Gibbs-White and then with Eze, because it's a really bad look. It looks kind of amateurish, doesn't it? And it looks like they've been completely waylaid and they've put all their energies in. It looks like they're not capable of multitasking. Is what it looks like. Like focusing on 4 or 5 players at once. So and getting the job done. So again, the bottom line's always the same. You always end up moaning about Levy. And that was the case sort of Saturday, where you could just see, God, there really are deficiencies in this squad. I think we're capable of playing away to teams like City and setting up shop in that way really well. In terms of playing against very aggressive pressing teams who are really good, like Bournemouth, who are so physically powerful and fast, we're really difficult. I mean, I could see their gaffer telling his own players, get up. He wants them up and at it, because he just knows that their relentlessness was killing us, So we're not good at playing those kind of teams. and we're going to struggle against teams with a very low block because we haven't got skillful. I wonder on Saturday if that was Brent was still at Brentford. I believe he had a very good record against.
Yeah, a very good record. He beat them. He beat them twice last season. He beat them twice last season, Frank.
I wager if he's left to his own devices, if he could, he would have played a cagier game. But he knows if he went 3 at the back against them, because that's one way to play them. Sit deep. Okay, then you think you're really good now. You come on to us. We'll play with just 2 up front. We'll flood the midfield, and just play a war of attrition. But obviously, if you do that at Tottenham, they'll all start moaning, So you can't. So anyway, this is news to me. Where's he played the PSG forward?
Well, so where does he, positional wise, he's a central forward, isn't he? I mean, Dave, you might have to help me out on that. I think central forward Moani plays straight down the middle. Look, I'll be honest with you, again, I've seen a mixture of different feelings about the player. I think at this stage of where we are, Lubo, to come over to you, we need a centre forward. I'm not sure we can be too picky at this stage. And as we've said, because of what's now left in terms of that pool of market, what you're going to be going for now is, of course, what you had at the start of the window was a lot more options. And we've seen really how hard it has been for clubs like Newcastle, for example, to go and find a forward. They went to Wolves and lodged a 50 million bid for Strand Larsen. That got turned down. They went and got things out, forgive me, German international. They spent over 70 million to bring him in at the club. They look like they've now got Wissa through the door. Wissa is another option for them. But, given our position right now, Lubo, I don't want to call us beggars, but we're certainly not in a position where we've got a huge amount of bargaining power in these next 7-8 hours where people know we're desperate for a striker, given this injury to Solanke, Lubo.
Newcastle finished up fine, didn't they? Callum Wilson went on a free. Isak's going for 130, and they spent that sort of money on the 2 strikers. So what have you got? 69 for one and 55 for the other. So you've got 120. So they've come out with 6 million, and swapped 2 strikers for another 2. And Callum Wilson was always injured. So Newcastle aren't too bad. We always leave it late. As soon as Solanke was, as soon as we saw the injury, they should have been on immediately negotiating over the weekend. Again, Spurs have left it late. In terms of a number 11, I mean, there's no excuse. Sonny, I'm sure, would have told him at the end of the season that he was going.
100%, didn't
he? Just knowing the sort of character and personality that Sonny is, he wouldn't have just dumped it on him at the last minute. So they've had 3 months to sort out a replacement for Son on the left. I mean, it's appalling. The whole thing is appalling. We're so short. If we get 3 or 4 injuries, we're down to bare bones. And you look at the team. Look at the team that started on Saturday. Take out the performance, take out the results.
Yep.
You lose. Well, for me, I would be playing Spence at right back, Porro at I would play Spence at right back, Udogie at left back. For me, Palhinha, I'd play Sarr, and I'd put Kudus as a 10, and then on the right I would play Porro, which I know is maybe a little bit out of the box, but I think he would be far better up there. You've got Richarlison. And for left hand, for the left side, I would play at the moment Xavi Simons, and that would be my 11. Unfortunately, there isn't too much after that. You've got Johnson, you've got Basuma, you've got obviously Bergvall, Bentancur, but you get 3 or 4 different injuries. You got Danso, get 3 or 4 injuries. We really are down to bare bones in terms of established players. And until Odegaard, I've no idea why they got involved with that transfer. Odegaard, I can see potential, maybe another year. Gray, another year. We are short. We are several players short. Going into 4 competitions, and again, it's poor. We talk about Gibbs White falling down, Eze falling down. Okay, so they've got Simmons instead of. But what about all the other positions that they just don't seem to have got involved and bought players for? I just don't understand it. It's really poor from all of them. I said beginning of August, someone said, I think it was on Summer Show, they said, where do you think we'll be in a month's time? And I said, well, I think Lang will be out of the job. And I seriously think that. I don't see any way, if Paricci's coming back, that Lang's going to stay, unless they keep him just for scouting kids. Because
Can I, Lubo, you know what worries me? We don't have, I bet the geezer at PSG is a far skillful forward, yeah? The one we're talking to.
Yeah, he can play down the left and through the middle.
Yes,
and that's great, but we need that big burly centre forward because Frank likes to go long often.
And to hold the ball up.
Hold the ball up.
Yeah.
I was hoping Germany seems to be a country that's got a few of these 6'5" sort of blokes, geezers and all that.
I'll come around to you, John. Let me bring Dave in. I mean, look, Dave, bless them, Lubo and John between them. I don't know how many years they've gone to Spurs for. It's not in the thousands, by the way. They're still 21 over here. We keep people down to a relative age on this show. So look, I know we've all seen a lot of Spurs between us here, Dave. But in terms of what the guys are saying, the older support. I mean, what do you think on that for you? Would you say, from a window perspective, we are really severely short going into this final day of the window, Dave, in terms of what we need to do now?
Yeah, well, I think you have to look at it. You look at the PSG game and you look at the Bournemouth game. Frank tried to change the game from the bench and couldn't. The substitutions that we're bringing on have shown twice this season that they cannot come on and impact games or even, hold up the ball and see out games. It's a huge problem. And, look, that forward line at the weekend, that was the big problem. Not one of them could hold up the ball between them. It kept on coming back. So, to people's point, we do need another striker in the door. You can't rely on Richarlison and Solanke over the course of this season. But I just feel sorry for Thomas Frank. I think initially he's come in here, he's shown what he can do with how he can set Tottenham up with tactics and everything else. And he's shown that he can pick the right starting 11. However, when he's gone to try and change games from the bench, that's where he's been let down. And that's where Tottenham need to come to the party now, this deadline day, and try and get a few more bodies in the door. But the problem we've got now is Frank won't accept just anybody in the door. It's got to be a player that's ready to come in and make an impact on this football team. It's been widely reported this summer. So we've left ourselves severely short. Look, in terms of the game at the weekend, look, performances like that can happen. Sometimes you can put out a team, you're expecting something else, and you get a flat performance. For whatever reason, they just can't get it going. But that's where then you rely on the bench to bring players in so that they can come on and impact the game. And they've just let us down. Tell is nowhere near ready and nowhere near good enough to make an impact. The guy's done absolutely nothing since he arrived last January. Udabur, as much talent as he possesses, again, when he gets into the final third, what does he produce? Absolutely nothing. Archie Gray, not good enough in the midfield. The kid needs a loan. The guys that we're relying on to come in and change games have proven time and time again last season and so far at the start of this season, they are not good enough to put points on the board. They show a lot of heart. They show a lot of fight, but they're just not at the level we need. So we really need to act urgently today in this transfer window if we want to help Thomas Frank, because if not, to the boys' point, a couple of injuries, we're going to be back in the exact same situation we are last season, where we're putting a lot of youngsters out there with some players that just aren't good enough to be here. And as much heart and as much as they'll try, they're going to cost you points. They're going to cost you games of football. But that warning sign was there when we finished 17th last season coming into this summer. The fact that we're sitting here on deadline day with still about 50% of our work to do in terms of incomings, we haven't even spoke about outgoings yet, it's not good enough from this football club. And yet again, I feel like they're going to let another manager down. Like, we can sit here and talk about Colin Moani all we want. The only way he ends up at Tottenham is if he's no other options. He's already turned Tottenham down last January and I believe last summer as well. Yep. So for me, I think the only one that's really left on the market that Tottenham really could do today that might come in and make an impact is someone like Ademola Lookman. But, Bayern Munich are still interested. They're going to wait to see if they can get that guy from Chelsea. If they don't, they'll probably bring this guy in. So,
Dave, one thing I want to ask you just on Lookman, I think what we have to bear in mind is, and again, this is from Jason, who has shared this with me. Something you have to bear in mind with him is that I think he's going to go to AFCON, and therefore, in December, he could miss a minimum of 8 games and a maximum of 11 games. Is that what might be the doubt in Spurs' mind, Dave, that if they go for Lookman and bring him in, you could lose him for 11 games? And if he's only alone, then does that maybe change the optics of that, Dave? From that perspective,
yeah, of course it does. Of course it changed the optics, but what other choice have they got right now? There's not really anyone else on the market that's going to come in and make have a chance of making an impact that Spurs can go and get. So they've left themselves in this position. And at the end of the day, if they really wanted to help Thomas Frank and there is no one left, then you got to get the guy in regardless, Ricky.
Do you share that, Lubo, as well with regards to Lookman? Would that worry you, Lubo, the fact that, you know, potentially, and it's only potentially I say this, that he could miss up to 11 games at AFCON, minimum of 8. You know, what's your feeling on that? Is that maybe a reason why the club might maybe hesitant to go and do a deal for Lookman on this deadline day?
Listen, it's not an ideal situation. As Dave said, we're desperately short, and who else is there? So for me, unless you go and get a 10 and play Simmons on the as the 11, which is a possibility, that's an option. We're running out of time now. What have we got? It's just over 7 hours.
Yep.
So
just over 7 hours. Yep.
So they've got to move. I just don't see us get it. I said the other week on our show, you know, I think it was last week.
Yep.
And I was asked, do you see anybody else getting over the line? I didn't. I was wrong with Simmons. That came out the blue. Delighted with that, but I don't know how are we going to do it. You know,
we are getting some breaking news coming through to us right here, right now, from Fabrizio Romano. We understand that Spurs have almost agreed personal terms with Randall Kolo Muani. So we're having that news coming through to us from Fabrizio Romano. Tottenham have almost agreed personal terms with Randall Kolo Muani. Crucially, what Dave said, we're going to come around to John in a second. This was a player that reportedly did reject Tottenham last January, and negotiations now are ongoing with PSG directly on a deal formula as revealed. With Spurs insisting, interestingly, Spurs are the ones insisting for an obligation to buy. John, let's come around to you on that. That news, Kolo Muani could be a Tottenham player. I know you wanted a burly centre forward. He's a skillful attacker, this one. Can't say I know too much about him personally. But John, by the fact we're moving for a forward, does that at least give you a degree of confidence we're going to get some support for Dominic Solanke, John?
Can I ask you, I don't know anything about the boy. Is he good in the air? Can he head a ball?
Dave, can I come to you? Is he good in the air? Do you know anything about this bloke?
Yeah, like he's a big enough guy, you know what I mean? He's competent up in the forward line, plays for France, done really well.
Is he powerful physically? Because that's what.
He is. He's strong and powerful physically. Yeah. You know, just look, things haven't really worked out for him at PSG. You know, I don't think the manager there is having him, but. Look, he's Spurs fans have wanted for quite a few years now. You know, he's good enough to be in the France squad. He plays well for France. Look, at the end of the day, what other choice have we got out there in the market right now? There is no other choice out there in the market.
That's right, Dave. Needs must. In regard to Lookman, I would go for him as well. I'd go for the two of them, to be honest. Of course, we won't do. If we couldn't have got Muani, I would say get Lookman. The AFCON's going to be an issue. I think Sarr, who's such a good player, and Pat Sarr looks such a good lad, doesn't he? Looks a really good fella, like a really good teammate is what he looks like to me. We're going to lose him, I believe. Is that right?
Potentially,
you know,
potentially, yeah.
So the thing is, with Lookman, you'd get him in. You may as well, and then just see it. You play him. You play him twice a week. You know what I mean? And then. If you have to, and then of course you've got Kulu coming back, Kulusevski in January. So you would have to think of that, you know. But it looks like we're going for Muani. To be honest, the slight disagreements I've had with Tottenham fans that were discussing the transfer market was another number 9 was more important than a number 11, and I think that might well be the case because I've got a feeling Frank will be going with 2 up front at times. So, and 1 up front even, you know. So I think on occasion.
Okay.
And if they like it or not, we've got 2 left wingers with Odegaard and Tell. You just have to think surely they can at least learn to do the basic minimum of getting the ball in. You know.
On this point, Dave, just to go back to Muani for a second now. I mean, look, they're in talks. It looks like they're going to try and get this deal done. Different to what you said before, Dave. They were in for Muani, I think in January, weren't they? And he turned us down. But the fact now that it looks like almost agreed personal terms. They're working on the fee now with Paris Saint-Germain. This very much now looks like the priority focus in these next few hours, Dave, right? Is it good to see at least we're addressing the area quite quickly after finding out the Solanke news that it looks like it's worse than first feared over this ankle?
Just on Muani, just quickly, is that personal terms agreed on a loan, or is that personal terms agreed with Tottenham with the obligation?
From what we understand is they're working on the deal formula. So it looks like they've agreed personal terms with Muani. Right. Whether that's personal terms based on a loan or on a permanent, I think that's what we have to wait to see. But that suggestion is out there. All we understand is they've almost agreed personal terms with him. Spurs are the club here, just to be clear. Spurs are the ones that are insisting for an obligation to buy in talks with Paris Saint-Germain, Dave.
So then basically, as I read through the lines, it's basically he's agreed to join Tottenham Hotspur on loan, and then Tottenham are trying to maybe make it a permanent deal, which would be interesting to see whether he agrees to come to Tottenham permanently or not. But look, at the end of the day, we need another player in the door. Dominic Solanke, from what is rumoured, is out for 2 to 3 months. I don't know how true that is. I see Ali Gold report today that he could be back, after his injection somewhere over the international break. But I would assume the fact that Tottenham are in the striker for another market means that Solanke is out for longer than expected, and they're not going to put it out today on deadline day when they're trying to chase a striker, because all of a sudden everyone just ups the value on their strikers if we go chasing them. So we probably won't get more news on Dominic Solanke to probably tomorrow or Wednesday. But look, when it comes to Colorado Muani, look, he's mobile, he's quick, strong in the air, knows where the goal is, can assist goals, can play down the left, can play through the middle. He's exactly what we need. I know a lot of Spurs fans have been, hyped when this guy's been linked with Tottenham Hotspur before. And, he's had a good rise in his career. He's done well with, I think it was Nantes. Then he's done well with Frankfurt. Hasn't really worked out for PSG with him. But, I reckon he just needs another club to go out there and show what he can do. And I think Tottenham will be the perfect platform for him to be able to succeed. You've got Kudos playing the right-hand side of him. You've got Xavi Simons then supplying him with chances. So all in all, I think it's a good move by Tottenham Hotspur, to be honest with you. A much better pivot and a much better name coming in here this deadline day than what I initially thought. So fair play to Thomas Frank for laying down the law and saying, look, you can't bring me in squad fillers.
Yep.
You got to bring me in proper players that are ready to come in and make an impact, because where we've gone in years gone by and where it's still haunting us when we're trying to make subs off the bench is we've brought in potential with no end product. And what Tottenham are missing right now is consistent end products. What we were missing over the last couple of years once we broke up the Kane and Son partnership is just consistent end product on the football pitch. And it looks like we're slowly starting to put the pieces of the puzzle together. Look, don't get me wrong, it's nowhere near finished. We'll have to go again in January in the summer to really sort of bulk up this forward line and improve it. But there are pieces of the puzzle being put in place that I would hope we would see a much better Tottenham team on the pitch because of that front line in terms of Simons and Kudos. And if we can get Colin Muani over the line, and we'll be a very sort of quick, dynamic forward line. And if they can, build up partnerships and relationships with each other, we should have another very sort of fluid front line as well. So look, all in all, I'm happy to get Colin Muani in the door. It's not one that I'm going to sit here and cry about all night.
Yeah. Just out of interest, I mean, just right now, Dave, it is just only Colin Muani coming through the door on this deadline day. What would you rate the window now? I'm out of interest. I'm just intrigued how our mood changes throughout the day on here. What would you give it?
If Colin Muani comes in.
If Colin Muani comes in now, what would you give it?
You know what? The problem is I'm not used to these level of players coming in at Tottenham Hotspur. So the players that we have got, absolutely brilliant. But we haven't really got a lot out, and we haven't really done enough to address our issues. But look, to be honest, I'd probably give it a 7 if that's the case. Just purely based on the level of players that we brought in. But we need to do more. We can't stop at Colin Muani. We get an injury at centre-back, like Radu Dragson and Takai is still injured. We get one more injury there. We're left light, and we don't know for how long. Romero and Van de Ven have a history of injuries. Also, you look at fullbacks. I wouldn't mind another fullback in the door. How long are you going to keep getting away with Jed Spence, Porro, and Destiny Adogi? So we're not done yet. We still have other holes that we need to fill. And the only reason why these need to be filled is because I'm sick of being a team that, we're nearly there, we'll go again next year. I'm sick of it. I want to be in a position where we can actually go and compete with these top clubs, and there's no excuse for it. All these other top clubs acted earlier in the market and went out and trying to solve all their problems as best as they can. Now they're just sitting here on deadline day trying to pick off opportunities. We're sitting here with the bulk of our work to do. We're all talking about incomings. But in order for these incomings to happen, we have to make space in the squad for outgoings. So there's going to be a massive push for outgoings as well. The fact that we're sitting here on deadline day like this is nowhere near good enough from the football club.
Look, I'm going to give you a summary of where we are at midday. Before we do, let's go to John on this point. John, if Tottenham do get Mawani over the line, which can I just say, there's been a change in Fabrizio Romano's message now. Fabrizio Romano has now edited his post to say negotiations are ongoing, but it's Paris Saint-Germain who are insisting for the loan obligation to buy, not Tottenham, which to be fair now I'm reading, I mean, that kind of makes more sense. I was kind of thinking, why are Spurs the ones insisting with an obligation? But it is Paris Saint-Germain, not Tottenham, that are insisting on an obligation to buy. Out of interest, John, for you, what would you rate the window if they now bring Kolo Muani in? How much does that bump up the rating for you out of 10?
6.47.
Only you could give us decimal points.
Yeah,
I
have to do the decimal points, and obviously a lot of thoughts gone on that to make it point.
I know it has. I know
it's just everything Dave and Lubo said. You do tend to get sensible guests. I've done some of these when you got.
Show about the bloody oath job. You kind of everything, right? You have to sacrifice sometimes.
And a wonderful, wise, and very, very pleasant host as well.
My wife does the same things, only on weekends.
Jazz looking for his money back out of the swear jar.
But
there goes the Christmas party.
Yeah, it's always that feeling of frustration because there's not. Just look at the top clubs. Liverpool had all the major business done. The one problem they had getting in was Isaac, which I don't know the news, but I bet they'll do it today. It will cost 130 mil or something like that, I suppose. But they got all their business done. Chelsea is sort of basket case of a club who just trade in players non-stop. It's mad. But the players they tend to get in are of the standard we are talking about, that Dave's talking about. They're elite level players or young players really pushing on at that level. And City will City. I'm not sure they're going to have a great season. I mean, 2 defeats already. They've already dropped 6 points. So you wonder about them. But you look at Arsenal. I think the Eze was move for them, sabotaging our move for him could well turn out to be like a bad move for him. Look, it doesn't all go well yesterday. Doesn't start the game. You've got so many. It's a slightly hysterical club, Arsenal. It's like slightly hysterical people that have a very brittle mentality. It mirrors their manager. So I just have to get that dig in,
Absolutely.
But still, they're ahead of with the project. As people call it, they're further down the road. But we'd won the league, the Europa League, a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago now. And apparently, do you remember 2 things? We were going to get 500 mil or something, right, for new players, and we're going to put money in and this, that, and the other. And there's never a clear message from Tottenham. It's always a bit of a mixed message. You always got to decipher things. But one question I've got for the 3 of you: when Solanke missed those pre-season games, and we were told not to worry, we all knew, didn't we?
We did.
We all knew.
Yeah.
We knew it was going to be long term. So anyway. It's not an ideal situation at all, but it is what it is, as people say nowadays. That's the way it is. It sounds like Muani, who I'm not familiar with. My younger boy knows, and actually both my sons, they know all these players. I've kind of lost interest in following what I still call continental football. I don't follow it as much. Watch a bit of Bundesliga. I used to watch all that stuff. I don't watch it now. I tend to watch lower league games now here, so you should probably know more about Championship players actually than Division 1 players.
Do me a favour, Joe. Don't give me any bloody ideas and I go to the market for any Championship players. We're struggling to think sometimes Prem ones on this deadline day.
Well, the thing is, when you are now. This is the thing. They're on a sort of cusp. As it stands, incredibly, we're a Premier League club. We all know we're not really a Premier. We're a Champions League club, but we all know we're not really a Champions League club. So they needed to step up to that plate and get shipshape for it, like in a matter of weeks. And so they needed to get in 3 or 4 elite level players on top of what they've done, but they haven't. So it's as ever, it's never quite enough. We all remember the time we were pushing for the league for the bloody league with Harry Redknapp, and we've got no disrespect to them, but Nelson and Zaha, you know, that epitomised Levy and Tottenham, which is you want a Rolls Royce. Here's a 27-year-old Cortina that was a very good car in its day, but it's now finished. I mean, Zaha scored on his debut, did he?
And he did. 6-0 in the Newcastle win, wasn't it? And Harry got off the allegation of the court charges. He looked so happy. Look, I need to go around to Lubo because we've got to go for the 12 o'clock news. No, it's not ITM breaking news, but it's the 12 o'clock news. Lubo, I asked you at the earlier part of the show when you first came on, bless you, what you would rate it out of 10. If Mawani comes through the door, I know listeners will be intrigued to see if you've changed your mind and how much that metric has gone up for you. If they get Colin Mawani through the door, because it doesn't look like at the moment there's any real pressing situations around centre-back links. Out of 10 for you, Mawani through the door, how much does that move the needle?
Well, I did say I'm going to downgrade it to 7, listening to Dave quite rightly saying about not getting players out the door. The problem is, you know, people say, you know, you look at Chelsea get rid of players, they get big numbers for them. Why don't we? Because we never buy right. That's the problem. The players aren't that good, you know, and that's the problem. So it's going to be, and I have to say it, until the owners change, nothing will change. You know, we need a fresh group of owners, you know, who are driven for success football wise. Yep. And I don't see it under this ownership. We're always short. You know, Dave was saying about we always seem to be short. I walked out of the ground after the PSG game the other week. Yeah, we're 2 players short. Why did we lose? Why did they come back in? Listen, they're a class team. They picked up their game in the last 20 minutes, and they'd have rolled over most teams. Could we have held on and just given away 1 goal? If we'd have had 2 more established players in the squads, then I think there's a fair chance. No guarantee because they're a bloody good side.
No, of course not. Of course not.
But unfortunately, we were left short. We always seem to be short. We're always those 2 or 3 players short. Yeah, and they will, and that's typical of Levy's of Enoch. They will take you up to a certain point where, because they're risk averse, that they've got the club competitive. They've got people coming into the ground. They've got people buying in the club shop. Yeah, to stretch it and go and actually challenge for the major trophies. Yep. Levy got lucky with Poch. There were some great players bought by Paul Mitchell, and Poch got them into a great unit, great drilled, efficient unit, playing super football. And it's gone downhill since then. Unfortunately, he got lucky once. You know, people's luck run out. It runs out, and unless we change owners, unless they sell, unfortunately, we're always going to be a couple of players short.
I would say one thing before I go to the summary of the news. I do think if Tottenham in this window do get over the line, if they get Colin Mawani over the line, and for me, if they go and get another centre half in, someone of the ilk of Mawani, I think that has probably been it's only my opinion. I think it's probably Tottenham's best ever window under Enoch and Daniel Levy. If Tottenham do go and do that, you know, when do you ever really see a window where Tottenham actually go in and buy 3 or 4 players that directly go into the first team? I can't really remember when the Tottenham done it under Enoch. I can't really remember that under Levy. Go on, Levy, go on, you come back on for a second.
Well, Ricky, you had Lloris, Vertonghen and Dembele that I think all came into.
You're right. 2012. 2012, yeah. But I mean, look, and even again, I'll be honest with you, you know, Xavi Simons, we all hope he's going to be a superstar. There's no guarantee of this. And again, it's hard. When I'm asking you guys to rate the window now, probably what's more fair is to rate the window in a year's time, because we don't really know how these players are going to get on. But look, at the moment, we're going to give you a summary as to where we are in this transfer window. And we'll start with the big breaking news, and that is Tottenham have almost agreed personal terms with Kolo Muani over a move to the football club. This comes on the back of the news that we heard this morning on Dominic Solanke, that his injury is worse than first feared. Now, negotiations are ongoing with Paris Saint-Germain over a deal for Kolo Muani, with, at the moment, Paris Saint-Germain insisting for an obligation to buy. So that is where we are on Kolo Muani. Earlier today, we brought you that news in relation to Man City defender Manuel Akanji. Situation slightly different than him at the moment. We understand that his representatives, despite continuing to discuss a move away from Man City before today's deadline, it's looking increasingly likely he is going to stay at the football club. So at the things stand at the moment, he's likely to stay, as is as well in terms of on the outgoing front, Manor Solomon. Manor Solomon is understood to want to remain at Tottenham. However, Tottenham will still listen to offers for the player. And again, that will be a decision that's made by all parties at the end if there's going to be a situation where a club comes in for him late. I have said this more than once, so forgive me for saying this. Both the Turkish window and the Saudi window, those respective windows are open for yet another week. So if Solomon doesn't move today, it doesn't mean he can stay at Tottenham. He may end up moving in this next respective week. Also, Yves Bissouma, just to bring that up to speed with Yves Bissouma. Again, suggestions are at the moment he is staying put with Tottenham. But again, I'll re-emphasise that fact. You've got other respective windows open for another week or so. So look, we could still see Bissouma leave the football club as things stands. And despite there being suggestions of Wilson Odobert being linked with a move away on Sunday evening, it's more likely he does stay at the club. And the situation Spurs have got in terms of the centre-backs right now, it's trying to find one that is prepared to play behind Christian Romero and, of course, Mickey van der Ven. And when you also have to bear in mind in the fact Tottenham do already have at the club Oliver Dan, so they've got Radu Dragusin that, of course, is still yet to return from injury, but obviously will be part of that squad when he does come back. So that is all the real latest news in terms of what's happening with Tottenham at the window. We are going to be here until right at the end of the deadline day, so we'll be keeping you posted throughout it. Please make sure you are hitting that notification bell, and please make sure if you can. I've been told by the hierarchy bosses at Last Word on Spurs, they want to take us to 40k. I said, are you serious? Apparently they want to take us to 40k today, so you can keep liking and subscribing to the show. That would be greatly appreciated. I'm joined by Lubo from the Spurs 5. Of course, he's a veteran. He knows what it's like, Lubo, on his deadline days. He's seen a lot of them during his time at Spurs. That's why his face is like that, and that's why he's thinking, God, what's going to come in these next 5.5, 6 hours? We're joined by Dave at the Irish Hotspur. Dave, of course, provides you with regular match day content, previews, all that is Spurs news and views. Please get over there. And John Wobble, you still really see John with a guitar in his hand. Only when he's on here does he have a face like that.
Can I quickly say, I
Please.
like the fact Solomon's staying, because everyone, he's just Deadwood. He has to go. That's a given. He's actually, as it stands, the best left winger at the club. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
He could actually cross the ball and he's got a trick in him. You know. So why not keep him? You know, he probably will move on, but in my mind, he's the best left winger in the club that we've got at this as it stands.
Okay. Look, we have to see on that situation there, because I think with Solomon, it does feel that Spurs are the ones that maybe are trying to push him towards the exit door. The player, it feels, may want to stay. I mean, Dave, just quickly on Manor Solomon. I mean, these outgoings right now where we are, like I said, Bissouma likely to stay as things stands. Manor Solomon likely to stay as things stands. Wilson Odobert likely to stay as things stands. Has that been a big problem for Tottenham? You know, in terms of this window, in terms of moving players on, and we had this conversation with Adam last night that, you know, it's easier to move players on that have got genuine quality about them and a resale value. Of course, Sonny, as we know, left the club permanently. I think Alfie Devine did as well. But bar them, we've really struggled to move players on. Is that just because Spurs, do you think they move the goalpost when it comes to, you know, fees and getting players out the door? Or is it just because of the lack of quality that these players are at? Because Brian Hill, for example, another one there, Brian Hill wants his contract terminated if he is to leave this club for Girona. So how do you feel, Dave, about these outgoings at the moment?
You know, when it comes to a lot of the players that we have to sell, the reason why it takes us so long to get rid of them, and a lot of clubs are only really either going to take them off our hands on a free or something like that, is because we take gambles a lot of the times in years gone by in the markets. And when they don't work out, well, then you're left with a long list of players that not many clubs really want to take a punt on at the end of the day. And that's why we struggle to get these guys off the books. Not only that, we bring them in here on decent wages, and the clubs we're trying to sell them to are never, ever going to match them wages. So that's also a huge problem. And that's where you get yourself in this situation. I think it was at Lubo that said it earlier on. You buy quality. That means that when you do have players to sell, you should have no problem selling them on and sort of getting your cash back. But selling players and recouping cash has been a massive problem for Tottenham for a number of years, ever since Steve Hitchen came in and made a complete mess of the squad, buying gambles left, right, and centre. And at Tottenham, when it doesn't work out, it spectacularly doesn't work out. And the whole world knows about it because we're always under the spotlight. So it's a huge problem with us in terms of selling players. And that's why we still, honestly, you're just seeing clubs now, they're going to wait around to the very last minute to try and do deals if they do want to try and get them done for Tottenham Hotspur players, because, they're trying to force Tottenham into a situation where they get the deal that they want rather than coming in and, Daniel Levy trying to charge them over the odds or trying to get add-ons for this and add-ons for that and stuff like that. The reality is we have to realise what we've got to sell isn't of great quality and isn't of great use to how many other squads around the world. They don't go in and improve their squads and stuff like that. So that's why we have a massive problem selling these guys. You bring them on big wages and the talent doesn't match.
Let's come over you on that, Lubo, and then we'll go to John on this. Outgoings, we're struggling right now to get the likes of Manuel Solomon, Basuma, Brian Hill off the books. For you, these particular players, do you think any of them, Lubo, have a long-term future here?
I don't. But if we don't buy replacements, you can't let them go because the squad's too short, too thin. That's the problem.
Okay.
Basuma needs to up his game, with his timekeeping. I think that's really poor, and he did that with Conte, and he's done it with Frank. And to be honest, listen, it's unfair for me to judge him over the last 2 years. It's unfair to judge any player in the system that Postecoglou played. But for me, he does need to be. We need to upgrade on Basuma. Gil was very technically a very good player, but not physical enough for the Premier League. So unfortunately, that was a punt. I mean, that was a 40 million punt because that was 20 million cash plus Lamella, who was valued at 20 million. Yes. So that was 40 million down the drain there. And Solomon, I agree with Jar. He is the best left winger at the moment in the club, out and out winger. If you're talking about Simmons as a 10, and if we don't bring in another 11, then for me Solomon's the guy that you start with. Tell, don't know why we bought him. Could well be a very good player in 2 or 3 years, but was not right for the moment. You've got to buy players. It's all about timing, isn't it? The timing of the player coming in, timing of the player, where he's at with his development, what we need in order to take the club forward. It's pointless just buying kid after kid after kid. And we bought 4 kids and 1 established player a year ago, and look how we suffered last year. Yeah. So at least Frank now is going after proven players, much better quality, better caliber players. But unless you're going to replace these guys, we're so thin on the ground squad-wise, you can't get rid of them.
Yeah, I think that's the key, isn't it? I mean, you look at what we've got here at the moment. This is the real point of it. I mean, Jar, coming over to you, just you mentioned there about Manuel Solomon. Do you have a concern about the fact how hard we have found it to move players out this window, or is that just purely on the basis that the quality of player that's also problematic as much as maybe our nature of how we deal in the market when it comes to negotiations, Jar?
Oh, look, 100%. But what the other 2 lads have said, in my mind, we are muck punters. Tottenham, they act like muck punters. They go for punts. There's been so many. I remember the time we needed key positions filled in the club, and it was the year we bought Dempsey. It was a sort of second striker, number 10 from Fulham, a good player, the American international. We had the German guy there, and the guy that ended up at Everton, was Norwegian, Danish, I can't remember. Really good touch, but we ended up with 3 10s, and we were lacking other key positions, and that was just mad. Another factor is we didn't buy any players for a couple of windows, so that then has a knock-on effect that you've not had any quality you've bought in. So you just haven't got all you've then dealt with subsequently is people like Brian Gill, and of course a skillful little player. Not certainly had a great career in Spanish or Italian football at a high level, definitely got a career as a player, but I'm not even sure he'd hit the highest level in Spain or Italy. really, because players get kind of hyped up. You see it from academy level onwards. We've hyped a hell of a lot of our academy players over the years, and that's another issue now, talking about academy system. So we've got all our academy players out. The only academy players I can remember of any real worth coming through were Harry Kane and Leslie King, I think. I might be wrong, but I don't think so. So you look at Arsenal with that Hell End facility they've got for young players, which is somewhere in East London. They put it where I believe parents could get to easier and all that stuff. But look at them. They've got a couple of homegrown players, Saka and the left back, and they've got they've got that new wonder kid. So they've got 5 homegrowns there or thereabouts. We've heard a lot about our academy and how they won the league and blah 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 blah. There's not one of those lads that I can think of seriously pushing for a place.
But Jack, can I come in on that just quickly?
Yeah.
When it comes to Arsenal's academy and our academy, the problem is Arsenal are out there signing players for the first team and they're supplementing it with youngsters from the academy. We're buying in youngsters, which is all of a sudden pushing the youngsters from the academy to the side. What you're seeing at Tottenham Hotspur is we're more than willing to give opportunities to youngsters that we spent big money on. But when it comes to academy players coming from the academy, we're very reluctant to give them the opportunities. Prime example, you go back to pre-season last season. We brought in Bergvall, brought in Gray. They got to play more or less in the natural positions. Donnelly was shifted out to left back to play. Didn't really get a chance to show what he can do and then shipped out on loan. And I genuinely believe it goes back to Tim Sherwood with Harry Kane all them years ago, where Levy walks in and goes, well, hang on, I spent big money on Soldado. Why are you playing Harry Kane? And Tim Sherwood basically said, look, that guy wouldn't hit a barn door with a Boeing 747. I'm giving Harry Kane the opportunity. And look how it worked out. But at Tottenham Hotspur, I just think the managers are very, very reluctant to give academy kids the opportunity. You look at every other club across the Premier League. They're all producing their own youngsters. They're all giving them game time, bar Tottenham Hotspur. Why? And it's because these managers are under pressure. We're signing Udebars for 30 million. I'll be honest, we signed Tal for how much? Mikey Moore had more of an impact in games last season than what they did. We're screaming out for a number 10. Why are we loaning out Jamie Donnelly? Why not give him an opportunity? In that Premier League 2 campaign where we won the league, it was him that was the standout player. It was him playing in number 10, providing chances for everybody else. It's why Tottenham's under 21s were clicking going forward because of him. But we are we're sitting here looking for a centre-back now. We're after loaning out a couple. You know what I mean? It's absolutely madness. We just refuse to give our own academy products an opportunity at Tottenham Hotspur, and I don't understand why. Look, part of it is to do with we change managers so often as well. They're so under pressure of results. Maybe they're not, maybe it's a case where they don't want to turn and give these guys the opportunity or don't have time. But why do you keep persisting with the likes of Tells and that when they keep coming on and they're not producing anything? Why are we not giving our own a chance sometimes? And I think there's something to be said for it. I think... when I look at what we've produced some of the best academy players I've ever seen in my lifetime, but we're not giving any of them opportunities.
Dave, can I just say it's when the whole interconnecting thing, the whole functionality of the club isn't right. So one bad area compounds another bad area. So you end up you don't have the comfortable framework for youngsters to be blooded properly. And what you're saying about Bergvall and Gray is exactly what I meant when I said about, we buy players, especially these young players, hype them up. Same with Tell to some extent. And so with certainly Bergvall and Gray, they're hyped up. I'm sure they're good players. But to be quite honest, and I think to be fair, Bergvall is looking that thing. To me, he's worthy of his place in the squad. He helped change the game slightly in our favour Saturday when he came on. But overall, it's just not. Yet again, we come down to the fact of how the club's run, how the overall things managed, and what the recruitment situation is like. I do wonder if when they do things a bit differently, they identify players differently, they bring them through differently, so they come through that system, and without having to have gone on loan necessarily, they're ready to come into the first team. So I wonder, and I just don't think all the dots join up with there's a sense of going round in circles all the time with Tottenham. And as Lubo said earlier, I think we all know we'd always be having these Groundhog Day conversations until the ownership changes.
But on that point, just bringing you in, Lubo, for you, I spoke about the nature of this window, what needs to be done. Would it be fair to say, would you be the most confident that you maybe have ever been? And tell me if I'm way off on this, that if we get these players over the line, given Frank's capability as a coach, do you feel that he could really do something decent with his squad this season? Is that something you can see, Lubo?
I'm not sure. I'm honestly not sure. PSG, Burnley, City came away really quite enthused. And you just think, they got off to a good start. And we weren't just beaten, we were absolutely pummeled on Saturday. They absolutely killed us. It could have been 4 or 5-0, in fairness. And I don't know what to think, to be honest. Frank is a good coach. I sort of finished, I fancy us to finish about 8th, to be honest, this season. Don't see us getting any higher unless, listen, if we brought in a Kanji, Lookman and Mwani or Vlahovic, who's another one that I'm sure Spurs will be talking to. Maybe 7th, maybe 6th. I don't know. City are struggling. I'm sure Pep will get them playing again. Chelsea they're top, but they haven't really kicked into gear yet. Liverpool haven't really kicked into gear yet. They've won all 3. And you look at the others that we thought we'd be competing with. We thought we'd be in that 4 below the top 4 with Villa, Newcastle, and United. And look at the starts that they've had. It's been a really strange start to the season. And you've got people like Everton who are inspired with. Jack Grealish is doing brilliant things. Why don't we go and get Grealish? We always seem to be short. We never seem to quite sort it, in terms of the transfer window. We should have bought 6 or 7 players in this window. If you're losing 2, you go and get 6 or 7. If we get the 3, fantastic. They've got the 6. If they don't, I fear we're going to be short. Someone like Conor Gallagher, we've not even spoken about him today on the show, Ricky. He'd be perfect. For Frank's system, he would be perfect.
Yeah. I think it's interesting with Conor Gallagher because I think the thing with him is that we know, Lou, to suit you for a second, he has been a club target for quite a considerable amount of time. You think he could be a Frank player as well, Lou? But that's obviously the critical thing here.
I think he's a perfect type of player for Frank's system. For me, personally, I think he's better than Pellegrini and Bentancur. So, why not go after him? I understand he was Chelsea captain. His family and his close friends are all Chelsea fans. He's not going to go from Chelsea to Spurs. It's a bit like expecting Jared Bowen to come to Spurs. It wouldn't happen. But just maybe, things change. Things change. You look at Kolo Muani. He had a choice of 3 clubs in January. Juve, Man United or Spurs. We're always 3rd in the pecking order. Things change. He went to Juve. It wasn't a successful loan. Juve have bought elsewhere. He's now got to relook at his career. Maybe he's thinking, do you know what? Instead of looking at a team that are halfway down the table, he's now looking at a team that are top 4 in the Champions League, won the Europa League. And the landscape looks very different to how it did last January under Ange. So, maybe they'll get Kolo Muani, but for me, we just don't go in with. Was right. There is no strategy at the top.
But do you think, Luba, how critical would Frank be in terms of that coaching aspect to Muani? He's seen him improve so many forwards, the likes of Watkins, the likes of Wissa, the likes of Tony. Just how much would Muani maybe look at that and think, do you know what? Maybe Tottenham weren't my first choice, but I'm going to a club that is in London, in the Premier League, playing Champions League under a coach in Thomas Frank that seems to always improve forward players. How important could that be, Lubo, in this aspect of it, and why they've now managed to agree terms with him?
I think Frank speaks to all the players, so he seems to be having great meetings. We've already had 2 great meetings with Kudus. with Xavi Simons as well. You know, put Frank in front of a player, and you got a good chance of getting him. You know, if the player's open to a move. So just maybe we'll get him. Maybe we'll get him.
Yep. Lubo, I know we're conscious of time, mate. I'm going to ask you just finally for you, just to give us a summary. We know, like I say, mate, your expectations are for the club to be in a position where they can fight on all four fronts and be successful. Tell me, what would make you feel confident in yourself today, what Tottenham can do for you to be back in that stadium, or for you to be back where we now next, away at West Ham, couple of weeks' time? What would give you the most confidence of what we could do today that would give you belief for at least until January at least?
3 players.
3 players.
All 3 players. At the moment, we're 1 player better off than last season.
Yep.
Minus Solanke, who I'm reading is now out for 3 months.
Yep.
Minus Kulu, who's out for 4 or 5 months.
Yep.
Minus Dragerson, who's out for several months.
Yep.
So the squad is weaker than last season.
It is. But listen, we will see what today holds. Lubo, I want to say a massive thank you to you, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Lubo from the Spurs 5. I presume you are on later on, Lubo. I presume you guys are gathering.
8 o'clock. Yeah.
They're gathering. They're gathering.
For an analysis after the window is closed.
They're gathering.
So
Lubo, you're
interesting. So we're there, 8 o'clock. The Spurs
Lubo, you're a star, mate. Lovely having you on. Thank you so much. We'll see
Yeah,
Lubo during, of course, the season.
Good to see you all.
You're a star. We'll let Lubo go. We are going to go for our next break of the show. We'll get Lubo out of here. Bless his heart. We're going to give you a summary of where we are as we approach, like I say, nearly 1 o'clock here in the UK on this transfer window. Malik Fofana was a target for Spurs, although that now seems to have diminished on the back of the news that we are hearing. Kolo Muani is now Tottenham's leading player of this window. And we understand Muani wants to join Spurs, and there is a good chance of this deal happening. Tottenham have almost agreed personal terms with Kolo Muani, and they are now working to see if they can get a deal in place with Paris Saint-Germain. Crucial element to this, if you weren't aware already with this deal, Paris Saint-Germain want an obligation to be inserted in this deal. And that's why it's making it a little bit complicated as to if Tottenham would agree to that. Because, again, from Tottenham perspective, maybe they would want a straight loan. Ademola Lookman, we understand that is also another alternative target to Spurs in this window. We made that point earlier. He could miss anywhere between 8 to 11 games because he has got to go to the AFCON in December. So that might be a reason why they are potentially prioritising Kolo Muani being the main target. I'm delighted to say also on the show now joining us is the wonderful Connor over at Levy-nomics 1882. Never a shy word about Daniel Levy, of course. Con, lovely to have you in, mate. Let's bring you straight in. Give us your thoughts on that news there that we are hearing. Kolo Muani to Tottenham, getting closer and closer. Your thoughts on that, Con, for you?
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Rick, and nice to be on with the other boys as well. Yeah, look, I think it's a good signing. I just said in one of the WhatsApp chats that I'm very happy with it as long as it's not the only forward signing. Because for me, Muani is best playing down the middle, right? So I think with if this is true about Solanke's injury, I think he gives us a really good option. I think, to be honest, he's better than Richarlison and Solanke, so he gives us a good option down the 9. Can play out on the left, but for me, he's not best out on the left. So I want to see a top left winger signing as well as Kolo Muani.
Okay, and like I say, Con, at the moment, just to get your steer on it, what for you would look now like being a successful window on deadline day, depending on what they can and can't do, Con?
Yeah, I think for me, the left wing has been an absolute non-negotiable for the whole window, particularly with the context of Son going. Son, obviously, I know he was on decline and it was the right time for him to go, but you've lost a huge amount of goal contributions out of the team, and obviously the sort of face of the franchise, to use a slightly cringy term. I think we absolutely needed to replace him with a marquee left winger that gave output. So for me, that was a non-negotiable. That needs to happen today. I think with the context of this Solanke injury, it may end up being a blessing in disguise, right? If they end up getting Muani plus a left winger over the line. So we'll see. But for me, as I said before, Muani can play out on the left, but that's not where he's best. So that doesn't solve our left winger problem for me if it's just Moani. So for me, we need to get 2 attackers in.
Okay, like I said, I think that does seem to be the general consensus among the fan base here. John, I think, one of the points you made, which is quite interesting when we go around to Dave, is the fact that, you want a certain profile of forward, John. You said for you'd like a forward that comes in and holds up the ball. Obviously, Moani is a bit more of a skillful attacking forward.
Off the shoulder, as they say.
Off the shoulder, as they say, rather than someone that's going to hold the ball up. With the way Frank wants to play, and we saw that on Saturday with Richarlison, how much do you think that is really needed, the fact of having somebody that can hold the ball up? Is that critical, do you think, to the way Thomas Frank wants to play?
Yeah, it possibly is critical. He certainly likes, at times, he needs a player up front who can thanks, darling. He needs somebody up front who can hold play up. Because sometimes we need to go long. If we'd had someone up front who could have really held it up on Saturday, although I have to say, I thought the Bournemouth defence got away with a bit. There were 2 or 3 fouls on Richarlison that were not given, and obviously there was a yellow card, the second yellow, when Semenyo pulled him down, knocked him over as he ran through. That was an unbelievably poor decision from the ref. You think, where are you at? Even Semenyo and his gaffer, by their reactions, thought it was going to be a red. But that's another issue. But yeah, if we could have somebody who can hold it up, that's ideal. But needs must. If you were to say what's more important, pace and power and the ability to make something out of nothing, is that more important than holding it up? Yes. And then you just have to play it into feet. You've got to try and play out from the back a bit more. But look what happened when we were trying to play it up in the back against a very, very good aggressive pressing team. We did struggle. So you do need to find a solution, and that tends to be finding somebody who can hold the play up. So. But there we go. I'm going to have to shoot off, Ricky, because I've got a bit of work to do.
No problem at all, mate. So for you, John, just before we let you go there, tell us for you in your mind, what can the club do in these next few hours that gives you the confidence that you would feel they've done enough for you? What will give you that confidence, John?
Another centre half, a hybrid defender who can play, especially can play on both sides, but certainly on the left.
Yep.
Plays a left winger and as a left-sided centre back would be fantastic. That would be great. And maybe a Lookman, go and get a left-sided player as well. Yep. Or it won't happen, and it's even another number 9. And number 9 is such a crucial position. Yep. It's as important as centre halves. So if you've got 3 or 4 rather than 2 or 3, you've got so many competitions. It's fine, It's not like we've got any young lads from the academy. You know what I mean?
Of course. Yeah. Listen, it's going to see. Joe, I want to say a massive thank you to you, man. Absolute pleasure. There's no doubt we'll be having you back on throughout the season of All Things Spurs, mate. So we wish you a lovely day, and we'll see you soon, John. You're an absolute superstar.
Ricky, boys, thanks ever so much. Lovely chat. Nice way to start the day. Let's do it every Monday. Let's moan about Tottenham. Yeah? You don't need a window to moan about Tottenham. Never getting it right. But no, thanks, lads. Let's hope we get a couple more surprises apart from Moani as well.
Bless you, mate. You're a star. I just hope John's connection there is not like Tottenham with Moani's negotiations and they're going to fall apart. We've also got David from the Irish Hotspur. Dave, that news that we're hearing is Kolo Moani. For those that have missed it, Kolo Moani really wants to join Spurs now. Quite interesting, Dave, wasn't it? Because we were here, I think, with you. Go back now to January of last year where he turned us down. Does the fact that Thomas Frank, as I've discussed, has got a real, indication and degree of improving forward players from the likes of Watkins to Tony to Wissa as another example, could that be a key where Kolo Moani looks at this and thinks a club playing Premier League, playing Champions League, working under Thomas Frank, could that be the reason why this time around Moani said yes and not no, Dave?
I'd love to say that's the reason this time around. I think, look, there's an element to it. I do think Thomas Frank could sell ice to an Eskimo, to be honest with you. And it's clear, his sort of conversation with Xavi Simons worked, and persuaded him to get a sign on the dotted line and stuff like that. But look, I don't want to be a downer, but the only reason why we got Simons is because Chelsea didn't pull the trigger and it looked like they weren't going to. And the reason why we're getting Kolo Moani is because other moves for Kolo Moani have broke down for whatever reason. And he just doesn't want to be stuck at PSG where he's not going to get the game time. So I think fair play to Tottenham. You know, there's an opportunity there, and we're getting in there to try and get these players over the line. And maybe in order to get these sort of players over the line, when we usually are competing with other clubs, maybe, you know, this is a way of going about it. But what I would say is getting these sort of players in now opens up better windows for you in the future, the likes of January, the likes of summer, because other players will want to come and play with some of the additions that we've made this summer. So all in all, you know, a huge plus. But yeah, look, I do think we're only getting, you know, we got Xavi Simons because Chelsea didn't pull the trigger, and I think we're getting Colin Mawani because the deal to Juve broke down.
Do you share that same opinion, Con, of that? Is that why we're getting these players in your opinion, or is there anything more to that from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that's probably fair. I think definitely with this Kolo Muani one, I mean, he is, you know, I think he's been angling for the Juventus all summer, hasn't he? And obviously that's fell through for financial reasons, it sounds like, and they've pivoted away to Openda. So yeah, I think that one is definitely. I suspect with Muani, it's a player we've appreciated for some time, and now, you know, this opportunity has come up, and they're going for it by the sounds of it. And then with Simmons, yeah, I think there definitely is something in there about Chelsea not pulling the trigger. But I equally at the same time, I do like to. I don't want to diminish what a great deal the Xavi Simons one is, because I think you know that although Chelsea didn't pull the trigger, they did still have the opportunity to match us if they really wanted to. At the time we decided to go in, and I think do you know what? I think we did sell a project to Xavi Simons in that, you know, Chelsea, he wouldn't be getting the same minutes. I think, to be honest, when it comes to wages now, and you know how critical I am of the way we think about wages, I think you look at Chelsea in terms of individual wages now, and they don't actually pay as outrageous as they used to. They've been gradually trying to bring down their individual wages. So I think when it comes to wages with Xavi Simons, we could offer him something really compelling. So yeah, I think that one. But yeah, fundamentally I do agree with Dave. I think, you know, if Chelsea had pulled the trigger earlier, obviously we wouldn't have been there. But their loss is our gain, I suppose.
Yeah. I think also, just to give you that news again, for those that have missed it, Fabrizio Romano has been talking to Give Me Sport in these last few minutes and has said on Kolo Muani, the player definitely wants to join Tottenham. I think there's a good chance of an agreement being reached and the player to have his medical later today. So it does feel, Dave, that this one is going to most likely now get done. And it just goes back to that point, isn't it? I mentioned about Lookman earlier, by the fact that he's going to have to go to AFCON in December. And the fact that Muani, you're going to have him available for what looks like, you know, from now to the end of the season. Is that maybe the difference why we haven't seen at the moment? And look, this might change, Dave. While we haven't seen that Lookman one advance, but we are seeing is Muani almost accelerate in this last few hours.
I think it's clear that maybe Tottenham are no longer pursuing Lookman. You know, they would have put in on they would have inquired about him, you know, long before this morning. So for me, I think they maybe pivoted from Lookman and trying to get in Kolo Muani. But when it comes to Kolo Muani, there is a part of me that, you know, it's sort of where the Eze one was left at, right? Before he was picked off, you know, went to Arsenal. He's agreed terms with Tottenham, and we're just waiting for the clubs to agree a deal, you know, and stuff like that. So I'm not going to get too excited until this guy's at Hotspur way and having his medical. But at the end of the day, we need forward players in, and there's not a lot left on the market. And I'd argue Tottenham are trying to do the best they can to sort of bring in players that can impact the here and now, or at least have a chance of impact on what we're trying to do here and now.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, at the moment, just to give you a roundup of where we are as things stands at the moment, Tottenham on the outgoings front, Brian Hill would like his contract to be terminated today so he can go and join Girona. That's where we are with him. Yves Bissouma, as things stand with Yves Bissouma, he's likely to stay at Tottenham as of right now. There is no other interest. There were murmurs throughout the window of Everton and West Ham showing a degree of interest. As of right now, that has not materialised. And Tottenham are expecting Yves Bissouma to stay as things are. They are considering offers for him. But again, I will remind you, Turkish window, Saudi window, both those windows are still open beyond the UK window. So still a chance Bissouma moves on in, of course, those latter windows. Also, Manos Solomon. Manos Solomon, for those that aren't aware, Manos Solomon wants to stay at Tottenham. He's made that clear to the upper hierarchy. He wants to stay, wants to fight for his place, doesn't want to leave the club on this deadline day. However, Tottenham are still considering offers for Manos Solomon, with the view that they would ideally, in a world away, would like to maybe cash in or get him out on loan to create a space in the squad. Colin, I've asked you before about this, around the element of Tottenham moving players on this window. Why have we found it so hard to move players on? Is it negotiation? Is it the quality of player that is one of the main reasons why we found it really, really hard, Con, to move the respective players on, like Solomon, like Basuma, like Hill? Why have we found it so hard, Con?
Yeah, I mean, it's been pretty shambolic, hasn't it? I mean, the only sales have been obviously Son, which was a no-brainer for anyone given his commercial pull. Højbjerg with the obligation, and then Keeley, right, for 1 million. I think it's a combination of all of the things you said, Rick. I think obviously there's a quality point, but then other clubs manage to sell players that on paper and not greater quality than, say, a Basuma, for example. I think it's a bit of, having to deal with Daniel Levy, and we've spoken at length before about every negotiation being a war and you burn bridges. And in football, there's a limited supply of football clubs that you deal with and have to continuously do repeat business with, right? And I've used this example a couple of times on your pod, because obviously Chelsea are the other extreme. But I think with Chelsea, they've clearly built fantastic relationships all across Europe, right, with football clubs, because when it comes to buying players, they do so in a completely different way to us. And so I think that's part of it. I think relatively on agent fees, we pay a lot less than the rest of the big six. And so, agents are probably more likely to want to work for them clubs in terms of pushing their clients on as well. So I think it's a combination of all of those factors: quality, dealing with Daniel Levy, the way we go about doing business. But yeah, I mean, it's really disappointing because all of those players you just mentioned need to go. I think the other point as well, with the likes of Brian Gill, I think what Tottenham do wrong, and I think we're finding it again with some of our academy prospects, to be honest, who I think just aren't going to cut it. Sometimes you've got to make quicker decisions on players, and what that means is you'll get it wrong now and again. But on the whole, you won't. And take a Brian Gill, for example. I could tell after 6 months he was never going to cut it at Spurs. There's an argument to say you cut your losses, you sell him then, right, and you actually manage to get some money in, rather than just loaning him, losing years off his contract. So the net book value's going down, and then he ends up going for nothing, right? So I think Tottenham just need to become a lot more strategic and thoughtful about the way they do business when it comes to selling players.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, I spoke to you about this earlier. I mean, how easy, Dave, will it be to reintegrate the likes of a Basuma, the likes of a Hill or a Solomon, if Tottenham don't get their move done today and they don't move on in the respective Turkish and Saudi window? How easy do you think we will reintegrate these players back in? Because I think with Hill's not been given a squad number. So, I mean, I don't even know if you can even get, Hill any kind of game time or anything whatsoever now until January. I don't know, Dave. What do you think on that?
It's not going to be easy to reintegrate. Look, first of all, let's start with Basuma. I mean, Thomas Frank quite clearly has told everybody he has a zero dickhead policy. He's not going to tolerate this guy, going around partying, being on balloons and everything else. It's clear that he wants this guy gone. It was reported well earlier in the summer. He told Basuma to instruct his agent to go and find him a new club. So, Basuma, I think, will be one that probably won't be reintegrated, or probably will be isolated. And I think Frank needs to sort of make a stand. What Tottenham can't do is force Frank into reevaluating his ideals and having to reintegrate this guy. If you brought Frank in and he has a zero dickhead policy, you get this guy out the door at all costs. When it comes to Brian Hill, like you said, no squad number. Look at the amount of wingers Tottenham are after buying since him. There's no route back for him at Tottenham. This guy's just going to be hanging around waiting for the January transfer window, and we're going to end up paying his wages. And then, look, Manos Solomon is one I would say maybe you could reintegrate by all the reports is that he still wants to be here. He still wants to stay here. And I would argue, probably would produce more or offer more than maybe it was Odegaard or Mateta would this season as well. So for me, I think the only one you could really reintegrate is Manos Solomon. I think you try and do Basuma. I think you're sort of making a joke of Thomas Frank, to be honest with you. The guys, like I said, zero dickhead policy. If you make him go back on that, all of a sudden other players are going to start trying their arm and stuff like that. So for me, I think it's imperative Tottenham try and get out these players at all costs, even if it means they have to rip up contracts. They've done it with Serge Aurier and that before.
Yeah, they're going to have to, you do feel, do something in terms of that. I mean, Con, just coming over to you on that point, reintegration perspective, do you agree with Dave that the most likeliest or the most easiest to integrate would be Solomon, given the fact that, you know, he was on the bench at the weekend and at one point was stripped and almost like ready to come on? What do you think on that, Con?
Yeah, I think that's probably right. I think he's, I mean, you know, I think Gil is nowhere near it, is he? I think, and as Dave said, Basuma, I think given this is not necessarily a reflection on his quality, although I don't think he's good enough either. But it's more about the discipline, right? And I mean, he's been a joke, to be honest. But with Solomon, yeah, he's probably the closest. But for me, and that's probably in some ways that makes that one the most frustrating because he's one. You know, absolutely, we should have been able to sell Solomon for 10 million, right? This summer window, there would have been teams that would have taken him. You would think so. It's disappointing that one hasn't happened. But I do agree with Dave. If you had to reintegrate any of them, he's probably your best shout, particularly as the left wing options are so poor. I mean, Odegaard and Tell quite clearly aren't ready yet. It brings me back to why did we bother signing Tell? When
I'm intrigued from your perspective, Con. I mean, I can't quite believe that Thomas Frank would have been part of that negotiation team to have said, yep, I approve this deal. He would have only seen a week or so in training of Mateta Tell to then have to make that judgment. I mean, I know there's been quotes that have come out and said, you know, again, he's excited to work with a player, but so was Ange excited to work with Timo Werner, for example. So I just would love to know from you, Con, how much belief do you have that Thomas Frank really looked at Tell and thought, yeah, he's a player that I want? Because again, that's £40 million out of the budget. That's the reason I'm asking. Yeah, it's £40 million out of our budget. And Dave can't, you know, Dave is there shaking his head in the background. He can't quite believe it. And look, Tell might go on to be a superstar. I have to be honest about it. I haven't seen enough yet to convince me. He came off the bench at the weekend, had that great shot, which of course went wide. What's your take on that in terms of the Tell deal, Con, and how much involvement you think Thomas Frank had in that say?
Yeah, I mean, I should overlay it by saying he's obviously still very young and he may come good, right? But I think the problem with the Tell deal is you've already got enough of those players of that mold of, you know, high potential might come good. You've already got another young French winger in Odegaard. You've already got more sitting there. You signed Yang. There's enough of those. For me, you know, obviously the original deal in January was an option to buy if you believe what you read. But I've got a feeling it was an option to buy because we potentially wanted to renegotiate the fee, but perhaps we had a gentleman's agreement with Bayern Munich that it was always going to be triggered. Because to your point, I just can't see a world where you watch him for those few months to the, you know, in the appearances that he did and think, yeah, that's the man we're going to hit 35 million on. You know, we're talking about Lookman. Lookman is almost the same price point as Tell. Or certainly if you included the original loan fee would be. So to me it seems a bit nonsensical, but I think the problem is with it, you've now got two youngsters in Tell and Odegaard who are not quite ready, not up to the standard in terms of really being able to impact a game when they come off the bench, and blocking what we actually need to have potentially out there. So yeah, it's a disappointing one for me.
Just on that as well, you know, I don't think you can blame a manager. The club made the same mistake with Timo Werner. Brought him in here in the January transfer window. It didn't solve a problem. Brought him in again in the summer. And the same with Mateta Tell. It's the club, you know, oh, there's a deal here to be done. This will be fine. This will appease the fan base. And I'm absolutely fed up with it. If you're bringing a player in January and it doesn't work out, stop bringing them back in the summer. They're not going to get any better. They haven't produced. You've given them the opportunity. Take your answer. But the problem is Tottenham keep doing these deals because they're so easy to do. And that's the problem. Once you get them in on loan, it's so easy to negotiate for the full deal. The problem, I think Mateta Tell's biggest problem is his work rate, his work ethic out of possession. You know, many times last season, I'm seeing Dominic Solanke, Richarlison bust their bollocks, you know, and this guy, when he comes on, he saunter around, doesn't really want to press. Same in the PSG game when he came off the bench. Same at the weekend. For me, I don't like the kid's work rate. And I think unless he ups that work rate, I don't think he's going to succeed. Everyone can sit here and tell me about talent all day. Talent is no good unless you've got hard work to match. That's how you really kick on and develop your talent. So if this kid doesn't up his work rate and stuff like that, then for me, there's no point in him having the talent because he's never really going to kick on. Last January, I was on this pod. I said Mateta was never going to be the answer in the January transfer window. And it turned out that was the case. And we've brought him in again for unbeknownst reasons. And you're just creating a bigger problem where you're now going to, Thomas Frank. Well, will I bring on Frank? Will I bring on Tel? Will I bring on Udebur? Realistically, neither's changing the game. And all you're doing is creating bigger headaches by doing deals like this.
Yep. Listen, we have to see. Let's bring Johnny in, who's bringing the beautiful sights of his holiday with us with him. We've got Johnny here. What a background, what a view. John, how are you? You okay?
Yeah. I'm sorry if I've come in and you two are about sound like you're about to.
Can I just say we were just focusing on outgoings, right? So you are here. Okay. And look, let's talk about the incoming. That doesn't like he's incoming to Spurs, and that's Kolo Muani.
Yeah, listen, look, I've been a fan of this guy for such a long time, right? And on Football Inc., Sean and I have been going on and on. What if the deal with Juve doesn't go through? What if the deal with Lookman doesn't go through? These are two deals that we should be all over. And then you hear people saying, yeah, but he didn't want to come to us. Frank has said, if they don't want to come to us, to give me a break. Who wants to come to Spurs? Who wanted to come to Spurs in the January transfer window, right? If you had Juventus or Spurs in the January transfer window last year, Spurs were imploding, right? Couldn't string a win together. And Juventus were, Juventus, going to be in the World Club Cup, blah, blah, blah. And they're a bigger club than us. Sorry. They are a bigger club than us. There's a pecking order. That's it. Look, 95 million from Eintracht Frankfurt, 95 million euros from Eintracht Frankfurt to PSG. He had a lot of competition. We all know about the competition at PSG. We know how strong in depth they have. Not mental numbers. They weren't terrible numbers, but not crazy numbers. But, he's gone to Juventus on loan in January. And those 16 games, he got 8 goals, 1 assist. Then goes to the Club World Cup and he was their best player in the 3 games. I think he got 2 goals and an assist. He is a mobile striker, right? Mobile, not like Solanke, not like Richarlison. And not only that, he can play on the left and the right. He's that flexible. But if you could get him and Lookman, I mean, listen, maybe I'm delusional. Maybe I need to go and have a lie down and the sun's got to me. But these 2 signings, if you manage to get him, even if you only get Kolo Muani, let me tell you, Kolo Muani, Simmons and Kudos are going to frighten the living daylights out of defences. And
you'd be quite happy, Johnny, if that was the only attacking option with Muani. You feel we've done enough in terms of that forward area, and we haven't brought in another, say, a number 10. You think Muani is enough to cover us in those respective areas, both on the forward front line and as an acting centre forward, John?
I think we should be looking at this as window 1. What happened to the Ange Postecoglou? It's only window 1, window 2, window 3. This is window 1. Window 1. Yep. Kudos, Paulinho, who I hope doesn't look like he did on Saturday. He looks about 38 running through quicksand. Simmons and Muani, I'm sorry, that is a massive step up on your Tells, your Odebers, and where we were before. I'm sorry, that's it in a nutshell.
It's a massive step up, Johnny, but still not enough.
Yeah, but Dave, I hear what you're saying. But if this was Ange Postecoglou right now, right, they'd be going, oh, it's only window 1. And
not
listening to all the excuses. Do I want more? 100% do I want more? Do I think we should buy a left centre-back? 100%. 100%.
I don't think anyone was making excuses for Ange. People like me were on here last summer and last January screaming for proper signings that we haven't helped Ange Postecoglou in the window.
Yeah.
You know,
He spent 300 million.
Look, don't get me wrong. The reason why we're not going to get everything done is because we're paying the price for not doing enough last January, not doing enough last summer, and really improving the squad. So we've left so many places to fill. But even what we've got now is still not enough. You bring in Colin Mawani, you still look at players that if Frank wants to change the game from the bench, he still doesn't have them options. Unfortunately, this is where we are as Tottenham fans.
You don't think we're up in it?
Look, I think we've upped the quality of the players that we brought in, Johnny. But the fact that we're sitting here scratching around on deadline day, trying to complete the rest of our business is nowhere near good enough. We've had a whole summer to be able to, complete deals and stuff like that. We still need another left winger. We still need another fullback. We still need another centre back. And to be honest with you, I still wouldn't mind another centre midfielder either. You look at other clubs, look how far they've stretched to try and solve their problems. Look at the money they're outlaying. And we're sitting here on deadline day, and they're the teams that we're expected to catch, and we're sitting here on deadline day. Look, I like Colin Mawani. I think he's a good player. Is he a guy that's going to move the needle at Tottenham Hotspur? Again, yes. I'm not. Look, I really like him. But I'm not 100% convinced that he's really going to move the needle and really sort of kick us on.
Compared to who, though?
I just don't. I think in terms of income, it's a decent window, but we still haven't done anywhere near enough. And the fact that we're, here on deadline day trying to compete with other clubs to get business done when they're just sitting here looking for opportunities, I think is an indictment of how poor this window has.
What would move that, Dave? What would move that needle for you now in terms of deadline day? What's out there at the moment available? What do you feel would make you feel confident that we've done enough and that we are ready for a 55, 60 game season on the basis of what is out there today that we can do? Or have we just left it too late, in your opinion, to change your mind on that, Dave?
No, never too late. Look, I'm always my opinions are my opinions, but I'm always open to new evidence or, good opinions swaying them to a certain degree. But look, for me, I think we're over there negotiating with PSG. Why can't you say, what can we do for Asensio? Left winger, perfect. Went to Aston Villa last year on loan. No reason why he wouldn't come to Tottenham. We can offer Champions League football. And to be honest with you, if they got in someone that could play left back and double up or someone that played centre back and could double up as a left back, no problem whatsoever. That will make me happy. Do I see Tottenham doing it? No. And the only one that's going to pay the price is Thomas the Frank Engine.
Can I just ask, though? I'm just a bit baffled here. Look, I don't disagree with what you're saying, Dave, the way we've operated, right? You have months to plan this transfer window, and these are all lastminute.coms. But let's be serious here, right? Let's look at the facts, okay? We didn't get Morgan Gibbs-White.
Johnny, sorry to interrupt you, Johnny, but Mawani, there's an Ornstein bomber on Mawani. It sounds like it's done.
Okay, let's bring that in. Right, we're going to go to Johnny just straight after.
Well, it looks like he's done. Connor, try smiling, mate.
I'm happy. You know me, Johnny.
Listen, look,
I felt bad for interrupting you.
Honestly, mate. Honestly, I am so excited about this signing because it's one I've wanted for a long time.
Let's bring this in right now. Let's bring it in right now. We're going to go Johnny straight after this. Let's bring this in right now. That news coming through to us. It's exclusive from David Ornstein, subject to Connor, bless his heart, who brought us in and interrupted us right on time. I don't like interrupting Johnny normally, but we're interrupting him. It's a bomber from David Ornstein, and John's going to come straight back in after this. We understand Tottenham have agreed a deal with Paris Saint-Germain over a straight season loan move for Randall Kolo Muani. Personal terms with the striker has been agreed, and the player is on the way to London to complete a medical. There. The loan deal is also interesting. The loan deal will not include an option nor obligation to make the transfer permanent at the end of the season. The French international has been out of favour with the European champions and spent the second half of the 24-25 season on loan at Juve. Muani was in talks over a return to Juve, but talks collapsed over the weekend, opening the door for Spurs. Both Spurs and United, we knew last January, went a move for the player. Muani's recorded 10 goals and 3 assists in 22 appearances for Juve. And Spurs look like they have got their man. They've agreed a deal with Paris Saint-Germain over a straight season loan move for forward Randall Kolo Muani. Dave, let me just come to you because we are going to switch over to a different stream in a second. Dave, and then we'll go to Johnny, and then we'll go to Connor. Dave, Randall Kolo Muani, going to be a Tottenham player at least until the end of the season. Happier Happier?
Yeah. Look, I like Kolo Muani. I really like Kolo Muani. To Johnny's point, you know, he's mobile. Look, I think he can hold up a ball. I know Ja Wobble was maybe questioning that earlier on. I think he can hold up a ball. His low move went well at Juventus last season. Look, I really like Kolo Muani, but is this signing on its own good enough to sort of get Tottenham up a few more places in the Premier League? I'll be honest, I'm not sure. I think we need more. We need someone else out on that left-hand side this window. We need to replace Sonny to be able to supplement it. You replace Sonny with someone of adequate, this guy's going to score you goals. He will score you goals. So I am happy with that sign. And where my concern comes in was, how committed is he to Tottenham Hotspur? And that's a huge thing. And how badly does he actually want to be here? Is he just come to Tottenham because there's no other moves available for him right now? And that's why he set up for Tottenham Hotspur. Because if he did want to be here and he was 100% that this was the long-term destination for him next, we would have got an obligation to buy in. I would assume the obligation to buy is more on his part, where he's like, there's no way I'm moving to Tottenham permanently, so let's get the loan deal done. But at the end of the day, I'm happy with this signing. Kolo Muani is a player that I like.
Dave, you're an absolute superstar. Look, we've got Anthony Costa joining us next. Dave from the Irish Hotspur may be seeing us a bit later on. Dave, thank you so much. We've got Connor coming over. We've got Johnny coming over. Dave, thank you so much. Please make sure you go and check Dave from the Irish Hotspur out. We are switching over and we're going to our prime time 1 p.m. UK slot. We're going to send you all over there now. Do not go anywhere. Make sure you rejoin us. Johnny, Connor, me, Andy Costa are on their way, as is Kolo Muani. He is going to be a Tottenham player. He's going to have a medical in due course. Spurs are moving. They are gunning for the striker. And we have got a signing on their way. From Connor, from Johnny, from me. We'll see you in 5. Costa's joining us. We might get a smile. And as always, we'll see you in a second. Come on, you Spurs.
Bomba.